My name is Brian, and welcome back to Barb's Basement. This is hands down going to be like the nerdiest stream we've had in a long time, and that's like saying something for the usual theme of like the channel. But accompanying me today is one of my favorite YouTubers on the face of the entire platform, Tad Larkin, the man, the myth, the legend. Tad, where can they find you at?
You guys can find me at Mandalore, Manda-lore. It's a play on words a little bit.
Yeah. So the general topic, like this is one of the very first videos I'd ever seen of Tad's, was like an expose on Star Wars Legends and talking about like a lot of the misconceptions. And there's like a ton of them out there, especially like during the time period where Disney had like just purchased Star Wars. And this is like gonna like immediately make both of us feel old, I think. Disney bought Star Wars over 10 years ago. It's been 11
No,
years.
it hasn't been. It hasn't, not yet. No, it's only been like what, 7?
Exactly. Dude, thanks for stopping by, GP5 operator. Thank you for stopping by. But yes, so it's going to be going on 12 years, and then everything was completely retconned, thrown out, and all that happened like 2014, if memory serves, I want to say.
Yeah, it was 2014.
Yeah. So I was like doing some research, like looking through some old like fan forums and stuff, like maybe even going through like the Wayback Machine, stuff like that, to see people's like initial reactions to when it happened. And we've had conversations about this before, you and me specifically,
Right.
where when that happened, it felt like a family member that I really loved just died. And I know that's like probably an extreme reaction, but it's like when you put so much of yourself into like a universe, like you've hid your shame of like liking it your entire life, all these different things. It's a very like complex day for me seeing that being announced. Like I was like on Reddit and I like actually said out loud, "Oh my god, are you serious?" Like it shocked me because we were DMing about this, that StarWars.com had like sent out a press release saying, "Oh, well, they're not going to be beholden to like the stuff that came before. They're like getting rid of all this stuff, and they're going to like pick and choose some things in Legends that they want to keep."
Right.
And my perception of that now versus back then was, I thought, oh, maybe they'll just streamline some of the plot points that are in the EU. Maybe they just like they're not going to have to cover everything. They're not going to cover, you know, they're not going to do like the X-Wing series or anything like that. Maybe they'll just streamline it, make it kind of like more fluid.
Right.
And none of that happened. Like what we got could not be further from like what came before. I mean, outside of like Thrawn, and that's about it. It's like far as like remember off the top of my head. I don't remember like any other things they brought in. I mean, they did Dark Empire just way faster and worse.
Well,
But
there's a few things here and there. So, like, sometimes I'll go to Wikipedia just to like look up sources for stuff. Be like, okay, so what sources reference this character, and I'll be like, really, this character? They brought this character over? I'll see it has a canon tab, and I'll be like, really, huh? Or sometimes I'll see weird things. It's like, oh, so the Outrider has a canon tab, but Dash Rendar doesn't.
yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like that's gotten like really muddy because like I do the same thing. Like I'm not going to Wikipedia to like just rip quotes from Wikipedia. I'm going there to see like appearances of characters
Yeah.
in which comics or whatever.
Right.
So that whole like canon legends tabs, they've gotten really complicated, like in the sense that they're not upkept very well.
Right.
There's a lot of things that like maybe like are missing, that like are out of place, or they're just like bringing up like a an error message like this thing has never existed. But so when to get to the whole meat of the conversation was when I asked Tad to come back on. I have like a lot of things in the expanded universe that I feel like are really huge misconceptions, and people. There's a lot of stuff that's like repeated over and over and over again on the internet as facts. Like someone made a video and it got a lot of views, and then it's just in the zeitgeist that that's what it is. And like, to be honest, and Tad, I think that you could like agree with this, is that the EU was like a niche thing. Like it wasn't like, not every Star Wars fan is gonna be reading all this stuff, but we can't like expect people to like to read every single book we've read, yada yada, or whatever. But maybe there's some people like on YouTube or Twitter or TikTok these days or whatever making clickbait titles like the one I made for this stream, and
Right.
they're saying stuff like Darth Vectivus was like a good Sith, Gray Jedi
Right.
are real, Luke Skywalker can move black holes, uh, Jedi are there was a Jedi droid, like stuff like that, like things that if you're just like having a passing glance at it, you're like, oh, that's pretty stupid, and then you move on, and that's like really dug into like this like the cultural zeitgeist, especially around the time that Disney bought Star Wars, and that was like your huge thing in that video was people saying blank percentage of the EU was garbage,
Mm-hmm.
and people they see that it's like kind of like a catchy phrase, and they're like, oh yeah, 90% of the EU was garbage, and there was like two good things. There's like what like 40 years of material there. So like how can you
30,
just dismiss?
37 to be exact.
Yeah. But yeah, like I wanted to get like some of like, your take, some of like your biggest pet peeves like in the community, and like what things kind of annoy you in that sense.
Right. Well, do you want to get the elephant in the room out of the way? Do you want me to do that, or do you want me to start off small? The big elephant, was it canon?
Yeah, that's a huge one, and I think that like I was talking to you about in DM was that what they said on like StarWars.com, which that page is no longer available, like you can't go to anymore. It seemed like they were kind of like preemptively saying the EU is not canon, and George never considered it that way. But that's your take on that. I love that, so I'll let you go ahead and hit us with that.
Yeah. So when you sent me that, because you were like, oh, and I'm pretty sure in the you're like, oh, I was looking in the original statement, and you're like, they're saying that the EU was never canon. I'm like, I read the original statement over and over in shock, and I don't remember them saying anything about that. And then, you pointed out to the line. I'm like, okay, so here's what that means. So, it said that George was never beholden to the EU, which is a fact that we knew, that everybody knew from the get-go. The authors that wrote for the EU knew that. The people who made the video games and comics, they all knew that at any point George Lucas could make a movie or a TV show, and that could be overwritten.
Yeah.
So we knew he wasn't beholden, but I get what you were saying, where you were trying to say that like they're making it sound like he never considered it canon, which is a completely different thing. So Star Wars, like some other franchises, for example, Transformers, Bionicle, those are all franchise canons, which means that the company that owns those franchises decides what's canon. And the expanded universe was like that as well. So Lucasfilm, especially during Howard Rothman's presidency of the company, was pushing for a one continuity sort of deal, where they were advertising everything as one continuity. And they pushed this a lot in from the late 90s to the early 2000s. There was this great effort to make everything interconnected, to kind of because at the beginning, and this goes into another misconception, but we can talk about that later. Because in the beginning, things were a little bit messy. There were some contradictions. There were some sources kind of going over each other, saying different things.
They're doing some pretty buck wild stuff, especially like that original like Marvel run and whatnot.
Yeah, like the original Marvel comics having Wes Jensen die at the Battle of Hoth, when the X-Wing novels have him alive and well throughout the entire 9 books. But that was something that they dealt with, and we can talk about that later if you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, so franchise canon versus traditional canon, where for example, let's take Game of Thrones. Anything that George R.R. Martin writes there in his books is canon, and the Game of Thrones TV show is not. Same with Lord of the Rings. So like Rings of Power, the god-awful Amazon series that nobody likes.
You loved it.
I got into it thinking I was loving it, and then like as every episode progressed, that's a whole different story. But because I'm kind of a Tolkien nerd,
you got Stockholm syndrome into thinking you were enjoying it.
Well, I was like, I'm gonna give it a fair chance, I'm like, if I could sit through 5 seasons of Star Wars: The Clone Wars and try to give it a fair chance, I could do it with this. And then by the end of it, I'm like, I'd rather go watch Star Wars: The Clone Wars. I had more fun watching that because at least it was entertaining and the characters were good. But
yeah, not to get too sidetracked by that, but like me and my wife tried watching it. It Rings of Power, and we got 2 episodes in, and I was like, I'm not watching this. Like, it's just too boring. It's like I'm just bored. Like she kind of tried to like get back into it, but I was just like, no, I'm absolutely not watching this.
Well, I knew all the background lore, but anyways, so what Tolkien wrote in his novels before he died, those are canon. The Rings of Power, fortunately for everyone who didn't like it, is not. But that also means the Peter Jackson adaptations of the films that were wonderful, those aren't canon either, as great as they are.
Mm-hmm.
So people try to, when they think of canon, they think of it in more in the traditional sense. So they're like, oh, well, George Lucas didn't write every single thing in the expanded universe, so obviously it's not canon. And, we have some quotes from George Lucas himself. There's like a grab bag, I call it, of some quotes that are very favorable towards the EU, some that are less favorable. But the general consensus is that he considered it like a tertiary canon, not exactly, his story, because he didn't think really beyond the 6 films, he let all these authors and content creators build the world for him. And if you watch a lot of George Lucas's movies and really analyze it, he's great at building like a physical world. Like he's not great at building like actual world building. Like, what is the economics of the world? What is the socio-political status of the world? I mean, he tries. I mean, in the prequels especially, we get a generalized socio-economic status of the galaxy. But then you have authors like James Luceno who write novels like Darth Plagueis and take it to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
And just like
the book is like,
oh yeah,
his political machinations, which I think is like, I've talked to some people who are like, oh, it was like pretty boring. I'm like, I mean, like it really sets the stage for like where like the galaxy is at that point, and like how they moved around. It like got things to the point like where the prequels could happen, like where there could be like a silent coup. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's fine. But yeah, so James Luceno basically took those concepts that George was trying to tell and trying to build his world with, and then like actually fleshed out the world using connecting all these other EU stories, which was very cool. But yeah, so a lot of people think that George Lucas didn't consider the expanded universe canon, and I will point out that in all of the quotes, he never actually says the word canon. And I think you'll find this when you do research for your own project, which you told me a little bit about.
Mm-hmm.
But he never once utters the word canon. And I think it's just because who he is. He's not really like into semantics, He's really just like, here's the meat of my story. This is the story I want to tell,
Yeah, and I mean, also, frankly, he's a billionaire. Like, he's like, I don't.
Oh, he gives zero craps now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's. Well, I mean, like you're saying, like you can pull quotes that can work for both of those arguments.
Yeah, and like you can really analyze these quotes that he says, and you can either say, "Oh yeah, he hated the EU," or you can look at it and be like, "No, he considered it like a parallel universe." And that's maybe I'm biased, and probably, but that's the sense I got from his quotes, that he considered it like a tertiary, like he has his sandbox and then the authors have their sandbox.
Isn't that in one of like the forwards that he wrote for like one of the books?
Well, yeah, so like for the first ever expanded universe book, which was Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was originally going to be the sequel, the actual sequel, but they went with Empire Strikes Back instead.
Yeah, because it wasn't like if it doesn't get funded, like if like this, that's like I'm basing that off of like a loose memory. Is that if Episode 4 happened, A New Hope, and then if Episode 5 like wasn't funded, that was supposed to be like the sequel follow up to that.
I don't really know a lot about that, but that's quite possible. All I know is that like the the script. It was loosely based off of a script for what would become Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
But regardless, in the foreword of that novel, he basically opens the floodgates for all these authors to write in the expanded universe. And, his company, Lucasfilm, that he owns, went through a licensing process to license all of these authors so that they could write Star Wars material that contributes to the overall canon of the universe.
Yeah.
And then they had continuity editors like Sue Rastoni and Leland Shee and Pablo Hidalgo. They weren't really continuity editors, but yeah.
But
Hidalgo used to be cool. Now he's kind of, being a bully on Twitter, but
he's all over the. He's a hard one to get a read on. I'm like, are you being serious? Like, are you actually an asshole, or like,
just
like being sarcastic? It's difficult to tell through like his tweets or whatever, but I'm like, yeah, that wasn't a great look, but yeah.
No. Sometimes like he's blatantly like bullying fans for like asking blatant like actual questions that he could be answering, but whatever.
Which was his job at one point.
It was.
So, it still is.
Yeah, so if you read the insider articles in the early 2000s, he was the guy you would write into to ask your questions, and he would often use material from the expanded universe to answer your questions with.
Yeah.
So just a huge 180 on his part.
I would be like really curious, like, to be in a room with that guy and to like really ask him, what is your opinion on this? Because he's like said, well, like the expanded universe like was never canon, all these other things. I'm like, did you always like just think that? And it was just your job, so like he pretended like you didn't think that, or because like people, it's difficult to get in somebody else's mind. So I don't want to be like, oh, this guy was. I hate the term shill. People overuse it.
Yeah.
At this point, at one point, it actually meant something, but that was going to be his employer. So it's like, did you actually not think that it was canon, or are you just saying this because the sequels are going to be good for you, like because you'll be able to keep your job? I'm sure there was like a great amount of uncertainty when Lucasfilm was bought. Because corporate mergers, a lot of people get laid off, yada yada, whatever, and that was like sort of like George's. The reason why he sold the company was so these people would actually have something to do other than just whatever random little weird project he wanted to work on. So I would really be interested to actually have a conversation with him and to ask him, are you being an asshole or are you just being sarcastic?
Right.
Yes.
But no, so they had all these continuity editors that would try to make everything fit. Again, this was towards the late 90s, early 2000s, but so there was a conscious effort there to make the EU into, one big canon on everyone's part, and even George. So we knew for a fact that he read the comics. We knew that he liked Quinlan Vos enough where he loved Darth Talon, where he included her in his version of the sequels that he whipped up really quick and gave to Disney.
Yeah.
And then he also loved Ayla Secura enough to put into Attack of the Clones, because she was originally a comic book character. She was in Republic comics. Back then it was just called Star Wars. And then they switched the name to Republic a little bit after Attack of the Clones.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, because wasn't it about, because it was originally about Ki-Adi-Mundi in the beginning of like that same family, same comic series.
And then it branched. So it started with Ki-Adi-Mundi and like Asherad Het, and then it branched out a little bit. Well, his dad actually, Sharad Het, but it branched out a bit into like it talked about like the Stark Hyperspace War and the what was it, the Yinchori Uprising and Maul's involvement with that. I forgot where I was going. You sidetracked me.
I'm so bad about that. I'm so bad. Like
it's fine.
George's if he considered it canon. Also, if it even matters if he considered it canon at that point.
Well, we know. So, what I was going to say is we know he read the comics. He liked Quinlan Vos enough to where when John Ostrander was going to kill him off at the end of Republic, he was just like, "Hey, I really like this character. I think you should have him survive Order 66." So John Ostrander was like, "All right, you're the boss." So. But then they did nothing with Quinlan Vos afterward, except for like a couple Tales comics, which were non-canon.
Yeah, because like he shows up as like an older guy in one of those.
Him and Villy actually show up as older guys and like help Han Solo a little bit too. So
Yeah, and like so that's like a constant debate of like, does it matter if George Lucas considers them canon? Because when you make something that is like this huge cultural phenomenon, it's like the ownership is no longer like on the guy who literally owns the IP. Like the fandom is like what's carrying that forward.
and
So
yeah,
when people say stuff like, "Oh, well, like it was never canon," like George Lucas's opinion, yeah, whatever. It's like, but that's not what was keeping Star Wars going after the original trilogy and like in between episode 1, 2, and 3. It was people go to the theater, they watch the thing, they clap, everyone's all excited that R2D2 killed some battle droids with some fire. But the people like us who were like the fucking nerds who were like going out and buying like the books and like getting source books, playing tabletop games, that's like what kept the fandom going. So like
yeah.
in my opinion, at that point it no longer mattered what George thought.
And we
And
we suffered for that. We were shoved in lockers for that. It wasn't
exactly,
like it
it's
wasn't like today.
back then.
Oh yeah, it wasn't like today where you kids are like, "Oh, let's go see the new Star Wars movie." Oh yeah, let's all get all our friends together. And it's like back then we were shoved into lockers. I had my PSP thrown into the dirt because I was playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 on it in
Dude,
high school.
PSP, it's such a throwback thought.
Yeah, right.
Like
Um,
Zach and I have had this conversation a few times on stream where there was a point in time like where Zach and I would talk about it like in hushed whispers.
yeah,
We would be like, "Oh, did you read the Revenge of the Sith novelization?" Like we were like afraid to talk about it, but
yeah.
I'm like, but we can go on about all this stuff for hours.
I didn't go on a date till I was 19 years old.
I hit it good enough that I could have a girlfriend in high school.
Oh, lucky.
When she came over, I was like, be prepared to see what the inside of my room looks like.
Shove it under the bed.
Like a whole bookshelf, and I had like a bunch of books like in like those big Rubbermaid bins. That's like where like I kept some of my comic issues and stuff. And I was like, just we'll pretend like you're really into this. And I do remember like her being like, "Oh, dude, now this isn't this isn't good." But
this is not hot.
with like 37 years of Star Wars content in the EU, of course, there's going to be contradictions. There's going to be, all the, these talking points that pop up around like the internet conversation of Star Wars being purchased, and that's where a lot of like think piece articles and all of these, you know, internet forums were starting to say like talk about things in Legends that were just like factually incorrect, or they'd make like these sweeping generalizations as though they've read all these things. And there's a few that I wanted to talk to you about, like in particular. And first, this is like a question I always ask him when I have as a guest on the channel is, are Gray Jedi canon and do they exist?
No.
Yes.
As an order, as a philosophy, as a like a creed, no.
Because I've seen like Google images of the Gray Jedi code, which have been included like in various YouTube videos and shit like that. I'm just like, no, absolutely not. That is 100% fan made.
There is no light. There is no dark. There is only cringe.
Yeah, it's everyone. That's how like everyone self inserts, and like that goes into like an area of the games are a bit of a gray area because it's like they want to make the game mechanics fun. They want to make like they give you all these different options, like KOTOR. You can be light or dark side, and Jedi Outcast, Kyle Katarn like says out loud, "Oh, the Force, no Force ability is like inherently good or evil." But he's saying that because it's a video game,
right?
And they want you to be able to like, oh, you can use Force Lightning because it's one of the abilities in the movies and stuff like that. And so I always want to get people's opinion on Gray Jedi stuff, but that one's a very, very, very like brief one. I don't think we need to expand on that, but
well, I wanted to say a little bit of something before we move on to the next topic, if that's all right. No, Gray Jedi is simply just a term, an umbrella term used for anyone that doesn't really, kind of fit into the Jedi code. So like, they'll say, "Oh, Qui-Gon was a great Jedi," and to a degree, yes, but he was still a member of the Jedi Order. He wasn't a lone wolf that went and he didn't use quote unquote dark side powers. He just didn't like the bureaucracy of the Jedi Council. He disagreed with a lot of their methods, and if he saw something that he saw was like morally like good and right, he would just go do it without the council's approval. And he kind of earned the title of like a maverick sort of thing, but he was beholden to the light side of the Force. He didn't use dark side powers, and he wasn't morally gray. He was a good person, good Jedi, just didn't follow the Jedi Council.
That's like that's the only definition of like a gray Jedi I will accept, is saying like you just said, like Qui-Gon Jinn was not choking people out and like
zapping people with electric judgment.
Yeah, and like the whole thing about like the prequel era Jedi is that like they're not written to be wrong. Because like, I've seen that thrown around. It's like the Jedi in the prequels were written to be like wrong about everything. I'll expand on that just a little bit. Is the Jedi were written into a corner, like where there's all these things happening behind the scenes to make them have to make really bad decisions or to be involved in war. It's like inherently kind of like muddy, like their whole philosophy and like what they should be doing. And that's kind of like what Qui-Gon was getting at in episode 1, was like, we're getting involved in a lot of other shit. And on top of that, like, this kid's a slave and clearly he's got force powers. Why wouldn't just train him, like teach him like how to do things, like show him the way kind of thing. And so the prequel era Jedi people will often say like, oh, Yoda's advice to Anakin was, oh, just get over it. That's not what he was saying. Like realistically, if you want to like boil it down, that's like as lazy as saying, the Lord of the Rings movies were just about people walking to a mountain. What Yoda's saying is, hey man, look, people are going to die. People you love they won't be here forever. And like, so you need to accept that, mourn them a little bit, but don't let it like ruin your entire fucking life. So That's another thing that I see a lot of people throw around, is that like Yoda was actually like an awful person, whatever, all those other things. But circling back, that's the only reason why I would accept Qui-Gon being quote unquote a gray Jedi, just because he's just not doing what the council wants him to do, but he's not going out and stomping Gizka to death or some shit. Like he's
just for fun.
He's a normal guy. Like he's like, I'm not insane, Some say that Jolie Bindo and Mitra Surik are gray Jedi. I wanted to highlight that comment just really quick because
of course. Oh, that's a good one.
Bindo, to be fair to him, he was not a great Jedi. He was a Jedi who went through a really awful war and had to, like, if memory serves, he had to kill his wife. That's how that goes.
Don't quote me. I'm in the middle of replaying through KOTOR, the first one. So.
we were just replaying through KOTOR on stream not that long ago, but he went through a lot of bad shit, and so like he was just like, I'm just done with the Jedi. This was all just really bad. This was not a good idea, because I think that he's one of the ones who went with Revan to fight the Mandalorian Wars.
Yeah,
if memory serves. Someone will have to correct me on that. But yeah, it's like that was just one of the bigger misconceptions, like the whole idea of Gray Jedi. Do you have any more thoughts on that before like we segue into something else?
I was just gonna say that the Mandalorian Wars really just was another one of those like boiling points for the Jedi Council, where it's like, kind of like during the Clone Wars when they had to become Jedi generals and lead this new clone army against the Separatists, and they were kind of on. A lot of Jedi didn't want to do that because that was morally wrong to them. Whereas in the Mandalorian Wars, they just said, "Nah, we're gonna sit this one out." And then Revan is like, "Hey, so these thugs are basically ripping the Republic apart. Aren't we gonna do something?" And they're just like, "No."
Like, we can tell something else is going on here, so we'll just do nothing.
Oh, and the stuff going on with Lucian Gray and Zane Carrick.
That one's hilarious to me, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
I love that they're like, okay, one of us is having like all these Force visions of there being a new Sith, so we need to kill all of our apprentices really quick.
Just like
sure.
the complete extremes. It's like, yeah, let's
There's
just
no in the
kill
middle
the princess.
for them. It cracks me up every time I think about it. I mean, because it's like what first comic issue that happens.
Yeah,
Like, dude, like give it 20 minutes before like you decide to like kill everyone that
right.
you've essentially raised.
Aren't you
Yeah,
gonna deliberate on it first?
yeah. So like maybe run this idea past a couple more people, but yeah, like so moving. We're already like half an hour in. This
Oh,
is
sorry.
no. You're totally fine. This is the issue whenever we get together, you and me specifically, is we can vamp the whole time.
Oh yeah.
So we've already gone through the EU and whether or not it was canon. Yada. What's your opinion? Was Mace Windu a Gray Jedi because he used Form 7 or whatever the hell people say?
So yeah, Form 7 Vapad, basically you kind of skirt the edge of the dark side when you use it, and just because it's just a very violent, very vicious attack sort of lightsaber combat style. And um I don't consider Mace Windu a Sith because like he yeah, maybe he does get a little dark with his Vapad, but if you ever read Shatterpoint and like it goes through all of his journals, he's still like he's a morally good person. And he's not he never gives in to the dark side. He and it's Vapad is tricky because all of other than Mace, all of its users like Depa Balaba, Sora Bulg, they all fell to the dark side and they were avid Vapad users. So one could argue
Sora like help him create the lightsaber style, if memory serves.
he did help him create the lightsaber style, and he was like one of the first Jedi to fall and go over to Dooku's side.
Mhm.
But I don't view that as a strong enough case for him being an actual dark.
Darksaber or
Yeah.
whatever. And I think
What's your
it's important to like to distinguish that just because someone's a Jedi and they go through all this training, that doesn't get rid of their personality.
no?
Some people are just dicks, and Mace Windu's just sort of a difficult guy to talk to.
I
That
don't think
doesn't
he's
make him a bad guy.
no. I don't think he's a dick. I just think he was a stickler for the rules. That's why
Yeah.
when they were in episode 1 where they were going through whether or not to train Anakin, he's like, no, the code forbids it. We've had issues in the past where we've trained Padawans too old and they've fallen to the dark side, or they're, as the Sith will say, they're too old to indoctrinate.
Yeah. They're too old to mold into our religious beliefs.
Yeah,
But
but
go ahead.
I was gonna say, but there's a reason why the Jedi started taking younger and younger initiates, because it's easier to raise the child with the Force than it is to take somebody who's lived their whole life a normal life and then be like, oh, you can actually tap into this magical energy field to make crap move with your mind. That's like a culture shock to some people.
That's
It's
the
like,
brochure
whoa,
they hand out. They're like,
I
here.
know kung fu.
Yeah. Downloading it directly from the Matrix.
Yeah,
And
basically.
it's like Mace isn't like wrong necessarily in Phantom Menace, because he's like, this kid's seen some shit, man. He's
Yeah.
been through a lot of stuff. He was literally a slave. Like, this is probably bad news. So
Yeah.
I just think that like the presentation of Mace, like in episode 1, 2, and 3, people take him as being like he's just a dick for no reason. I mean,
No.
it's proven throughout the three movies he was not wrong because Anakin killed a bunch of kids. So
Yeah.
it's like,
And him,
and
basically.
him, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
in a roundabout way, but he still killed him. Cut his hand off, but he got there. But yeah, it's like Mace's. We can't conflate like dark side with just being a rigid guy.
He was a
I've known
hard ass. He was a
I've
hard ass.
known a lot of rigid, hard ass type people.
Yeah.
I'm not assuming that they're like secret space Nazis or something. It's
Yeah,
like
right.
that's like sort of I see that like in certain circles. I'm all over like every subreddit in various discords. That's like sort of like a kind of like a common belief is that Mace is not a dark sider, but he's a morally gray person. Like
No.
his interest was always in the interest of the Jedi and of the Republic and making sure things were like safe or whatever. And the whole, Mace saying he's too powerful to be kept alive, we need to like kill him. We'll take control of all these other things. People are like, oh well, that's like a like a dictatorship type thing. And I'm like, we literally got a dictatorship because Mace was not able to kill the guy who became a dictator.
Yeah.
His mind was in the right place, you know.
Right. And you don't know what the Jedi would have done. So probably what the protocol would have been is if, they did successfully depose Palpatine, they would have held elections. Like they probably would have given like the senior most speaker of the Senate or whoever the vice chancellor was, which I think would fall to Masamita if I'm in.
Yeah, just a straight up Sith sympathizer.
Yeah. So, or it might even be like Sate Pestage or someone, but I think he was just an advisor.
What was Masamita's technical role?
I think he was just Speaker of the Senate. I can't remember.
I'm gonna Google it really quick. What did Masamita do for a living? What was his benefits?
Other than sit there and scowl and do his weird long tongue thing.
He's got a great. I love that species.
The Chagreens? Yeah.
Dude, I absolutely love that.
They're cool looking.
Served under the self-proclaimed. Okay, but what was his job? Wikipedia, you're not giving me what I want, so I'm just gonna exit out of that. Yeah, he seemed to just be like the Speaker of the House,
right?
Role. I don't think he was a senator, right?
I don't think so. I think he was like up there with like the executive branch, but don't quote me. Maybe I'll have to do a video on Masamita sometime.
Yeah, he's an interesting role. Him and
Sly Moore.
Sly Moore, yeah. That was like a big thing when episode 9 was coming out, where people were like, "Did Palpatine have a kid with Sly Moore?" No, Palpatine didn't.
Well, so that comes from either Trioculus or Triclops. I can't remember which one. One's pretending to be the other.
That is okay. I will say that story is stupid, but it's hilarious that one guy with a third eye is pretending to be a different guy with a third eye.
But the story behind that is possibly he was like a Sith alchemical experiment of Palpatine's, and then like some people were saying possibly he was a mutated offspring between Palpatine and Sly Moore, which is also quite ridiculous. But
yeah, and then GP5 operator, he literally told young Boba Fett he's going to have to forgive him for decapping. To be fair, I don't think that Mace Windu saw his son and was like, "I'm going to kill this guy in front of his son."
So he's actually referencing what happened in the young Boba Fett novels.
I mean, maybe, but like, yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever read the young Boba Fett novels. Honestly, like Boba Fett's always been like kind of an unknown for me. I've only read like a few things with him. I've read like my whole thing is the Force.
Right.
That's what I'm really into.
My whole thing is guys with blasters and armor. So
100%. And then just moving away from the Mace topic really quick. I think this will kind of like bleed into like what we were just talking about is people often conflate balance in the Force being literally 1-to-1 or somebody being an equal amount of dark and light. And that's just lunacy to me.
Oh,
and it goes against like everything that George had ever said, like out loud about the topic.
Right.
He's talked very openly about the balance in the Force being the Jedi. And the whole point of the prequels, in my opinion, was that the Jedi were thrown out of balance. And that's like why they weren't able to sense that Palpatine, the guy right in front of them, was a Sith. And I think that people get confused by episode 6, where Luke kills, the Sith, and then his dad dies, who was also a Sith. It's like, that's the balance, is there's 1-to-1 or whatever. What are your thoughts on that? And that kind of some of those misconceptions.
Oh, that's completely ridiculous. It's like, to truly balance the Force, let's kill two of the Sith, and then let's leave all but one Jedi alive. Yeah. Which is completely dumb. It's almost like finding balance in the Force is almost like finding balance in yourself in life. It's and like you said, at that point the dark side had become so powerful that just concentrated in these two beings was like the entire power of the dark side, and it overshadowed the light side, which was encompassed by all of these tens of thousands of Jedi Knights that were running around the galaxy. And it's like, holy crap, how did they become so powerful? Well, you could thank Darth Bane for that, but that's a whole other trilogy.
I mean, even the Darth Bane stuff, that one's like that will also go into like my whole Darth Vectivus opinions is Bane's whole line of Sith. Like the thought process was like each one would get more and more powerful with like each subsequent like
Yeah.
master and apprentice situation or whatever.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's a difficult thing for Sith to do because they're inherently selfish. That's like the whole point of it is that like their power is its own purpose to share, to dilute it. So I feel like that's like a double-edged sword for them because it's in theory steel sharpens steel or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also like in that Sith Lord's best interest to not teach their apprentice how to literally kill them. So like that's another big misconception that I hate seeing people refer to Darth Vectivus as the only good Sith Lord.
Yeah, he was still a Sith.
I don't know if like how recently you've read through Legacy of the Force. I think my last read through was like maybe 2-3 years ago. It is not presented as absolute fact. Like
No.
Maya, it's like, oh, Jason, you could totally kill some of your friends or kill a bunch of people for the greater good of the galaxy. And Darth Vectivus was this good Sith Lord. He was just a businessman doing business deals or whatever.
Darth businessman.
Darth businessman, and it's never presented as absolute fact. It's never presented as she's an unreliable narrator. Like she's got a motive for convincing Jason to kill Jedi and to like take down the whole Skywalker legacy and stuff like that. Do you see like that character being referenced a lot, like in your comment sections or like people asking you to make videos on it?
One or two people at the beginning have asked me to do a Darth Vectivus video, and this was before shorts existed, and I'm like, well, this is gonna have to be like a super short video. But now that shorts exist, I can do a whole Darth Vectivus biography. And are we even sure if Darth Vectivus was actually real with the amount of lying?
He shows up as like a specter like type thing, not a Sith ghost.
Yeah.
Like that.
How do we know?
He has a holocron that Alima Rar gets from the one Sith on Korriban, but it's never turned on, and we don't ever dive into like that lore of that character really.
How do we know that Lumaya just wasn't projecting a random Force image and saying, "Oh, this is the ghost of Darth Vectivus," Because she was doing all of that projection crap in the first book, where she was having, Jason fight an apparition of evil Luke, but he was actually fighting regular Luke on Coruscant. And then Ben fighting an evil Mara, but it was actually real Mara on Coruscant. So how do we know she wasn't just projecting some sort of Force phantom?
And it definitely is presented that way. Like it's meant to. You're like, no, this lady's full of shit, because like we as a reader know who she is,
right?
And she, she confesses, yeah, I'm Lumaya. I used to almost bang your uncle, and then things went bad, and that's the whole presentation of it, is that she's an unreliable narrator, and Jason kind of wants to hear that. Like he already like in Legacy of the Force, we can go back and forth on whether or not the character Jason Solo is the same character from New Jedi Order, but he wants to hear that. He's hearing what he wants to hear, and she's giving him what he wants. And like I said, Alima Rar gets Darth Vectivus' holocron on Korriban. It's never turned on. We never actually meet that character in any way, shape, or form. And Alima Rar just kind of like fucks off.
Right.
She runs away because she's like, well, I went and met the one Sith, and now I'm getting the hell out of here because things are going bad.
Well, the other thing is the Sith lie. That's an established fact. We know that.
I mean, Palpatine loves it. He's doing the entirety of the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
And really quickly, just to acknowledge what chat's saying here is, what's wrong with the Bane trilogy? That's an inside joke that we have here on the channel because Zach said that the Thought Bomb was stupid, but he liked the Revan book. I'm like, you like?
Oh, he liked Revan, but he didn't like Bane trilogy.
He's like, well, the sum total of the Bane trilogy is good, but the Thought Bomb's dumb. And I'm like, but think of it in the context of what's going on in the book. Is Khan is like desperate as hell. Things are not going good. And so he's, oh yeah, I'll use like this mega weapon, yada, whatever. But that was a whole like argument that Zach and I got into one night when we were having a few too many drinks here on stream and confessed that out loud. So that's just an incorrect opinion to have, though. He's wrong. Objectively.
That's right. A very incorrect subjective opinion. Gotcha.
Yeah. The Revan book is that one's a weird one for me. Wait, hold on. Sorry.
That's fine.
Now, Kai had sent me a technical question, but the Revan book one, that one's a difficult one because it's kind of retconning the things that happened in KOTOR,
Right.
so they can build into SWOTOR.
So this actually kind of plays into a misconception I kind of wanted to talk about and get your feelings on. A lot of people view Revan as this like he was like the best Sith, or he was like the best Jedi, when in my opinion really Revan is just a pair of pants for the player to put on and wear. What are your opinions on people kind of overinflating Revan, or are you one of the people that think Revan is actually like this?
No, not at all. I 100% agree with you in that sense that he's a character that you're supposed to self-insert onto. It's like the reason why like Link in all of the Zelda games is voiceless. Like you're inserting yourself into that role, and that he's like, honestly, the way that they wrote him in the Revan book just brain poisoned a lot of people who are in the EU like fandom, and that was really the driving force behind a lot of like this Gray Jedi propaganda that's all over the places. He like literally gets split into two people in SWOTOR, which is just objectively stupid. Like he's still alive, which is insanity 300 years after KOTOR, and B, the fact that they couldn't they didn't want to say no, the light side option is objectively what happened. So they're like, oh, both were true, sort of thing.
It was for years stated that the light side option was canon, and this is kind of going into what you were saying earlier about the video games and what their level of canon was. Most of the time with Star Wars video games, the light side ending is always what's canon, while the dark side ending is usually non-canon. This goes for KOTOR, the Jedi Knight games.
I always
Force
forget
Unleashed.
There's an option for that.
Oh yeah, you could literally be Kyle Katarn, and you can literally just kill Jan Ors and then kill Jarek, and then become the Sith Emperor yourself.
And then in Jedi Academy, you can kill what the hell's it? Rosh?
Yeah.
Fucking hate that dude. He is the most killable guy in the entirety of like any Star Wars game.
Yeah.
It's annoying. But yeah, like you're saying, like the light side options in all of those games, or that's the assumption that's what's canon.
Oh, that's what's established in all the source books. The light side option is always taken as what is the canon story.
Yeah, like the Jedi versus the Sith, Essential Guide to the Force. Damn, dude, this is like such a nerdy conversation. I love it. But like that book, they kind of like skirt around some of that. Like things aren't like necessarily like plot points A, B, and C, side quests A, B, and C. Went this way. It's just Revan came back to the light side. Let's move past it. Like that's even like playing the game. Like that's was my understanding. Just beating it for the first time, I was like, okay, yeah, this is the true good ending type of thing.
Yeah.
And yes, Strike, I absolutely love Gray Jedi, 100%. And I think that GP5 said Dude gets his own cult. That's another plot point in SWOTOR is there's like a whole cult of Darth Revan, but like from memory, if memory serves, they were like Darksiders. Like hell yeah, we're doing bad stuff. But there's like a lot of those like little types of things where these nuanced these nuanced points in various books and media, video games, or whatever, people take like those one little nuanced things, they get rid of all the nuance to it, and they just state it as objective facts.
Yeah.
But this was, hopefully we're not hopping too all over the place here, but I wanted to get your opinion on, because you're a huge clone guy, you love Mandalorians, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're Tad Larkin himself. What do you think of the Clone Troopers in Order 66 in Disney canon versus Legends canon?
Well, it's technically canon in Legends too, but I ignore it.
Because it's TCW, sort of.
Well, even if it wasn't TCW, the council has made a decision, but given the fact that it's a stupid-ass decision, I've elected to ignore it. The whole brain chips thing came about because the writers for TCW wrote themselves into a corner where they made their clones too loyal to their Jedi generals to the point where they know that the audience would not believe that the clones would willingly execute Order 66.
Yeah.
So they had to make it so that it was like an actual implant in their head that made it so that the clones, did what they were supposed to do.
They gave him too much personality.
But
So
not even too
you
much
couldn't do the killing
personality.
thing, killing Jedi that would be.
They made them too attached to their Jedi generals to where you would not actually believe that Cody would go and try to kill Obi-Wan. You wouldn't believe that Gree would try to kill Yoda, or Bly would try to kill Ayla Secura.
Mhm.
So, however, I feel like the expanded universe did it better, where they had so Order 66 was part of 65 contingency orders that were established during the Enhanced Security and Enforcement Act, which it's actually in the expanded universe, Palpatine during the Clone Wars was passing all of these laws using his emergency powers that were taking a lot of rights away from galactic citizens, which I think these are important stories that we should pay attention to, especially in our modern world. So Palpatine's taking all these rights away from galactic citizens, and the contingency orders are part of this pack of different laws he's, passing in the Senate, where Order 66 basically just states that in the event that your Jedi generals are acting against the interests of the Republic, once the order is issued, you are tasked to eliminate your Jedi generals, and then all of the power to the GAR shifts directly to Chancellor Palpatine, and then he directly controls the clone armies versus the Jedi. And all of the indoctrination that was established in Attack of the Clones is what caused them to, comply. And it's explained in the books that not only was it just their genetic conditioning, but when they heard that Order 66 was issued, so the clones knew what it meant, that the Jedi tried to take over the Republic. And they are so indoctrinated to serve the Republic and to serve, the Senate and the citizens of the Republic, that for the Jedi to go and betray the Republic like that was just heartbreaking for them. Like,
yeah.
And you, like, in the books, and even in like Star Wars Battlefront 2, they don't want to kill the Jedi. They
feel like the regret, like in the narrator.
They were very regretful and remorseful, but the Jedi had betrayed everything they believed in, everything that they were fighting for in their view. So,
I just wanted to highlight this comment really quick. I personally prefer TCW clones having emotions, but that's just me. For me, as someone who did not grow up with TCW, like the Clone Wars animated movie came out when I was I think maybe like a junior or senior in high school, and they're clearly not written for me. I didn't grow up with them, yada yada, whatever. But I feel like Order 66 has a lot more weight to it when they have free will. When that agency is stripped away from them and it's like a microchip in their brain that's making them do it, it sort of gets rid of that darkness to it, if that makes sense. Like,
right. And this is another common misconception, was that the clones in the EU didn't have personality. If you read the Republic Commando novels, the clones had lots of personality. And
it was like Delta Squad?
Well, Delta Squad, Omega Squad, but they also go into some of like the boots on the ground clones, where the different clones basically had different tiers of indoctrination. So the ARC troopers were basically straight up Jango, and Jango Fett himself trained them. Then you had the clone commandos, which were trained to be a little bit more independent than the regular rank and file troopers.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had the rank and file troopers who are supposed to, follow orders. And now, because Jango was a lone soldier, like a lone wolf type of person, he wasn't a team player. We knew this. The Kaminoans had to edit their genes to make the clones more susceptible to taking orders. So, just because these clones are, more susceptible to taking orders doesn't mean that their personality is gone. You could still have the clones with personality. The personality is not what we're arguing about. What we're arguing about, well, not us arguing per se, but what we're stating is that having the, ability, having the free will, so to speak, the perceived free will replaced with the brain chips is asinine, and it takes away a lot of the nuance, and it takes away a lot of what the clones were thinking when it was going through Order 66 away from them. Not only does it take away stuff from the clones, but it also, Order 66 was almost kind of like this poetic justice for Jango, where during the Battle of Galadran, during the Mandalorian Civil War, the Jedi slaughtered all of his men and then took him captive and sold him into slavery. So Order 66 was almost like Jango's personal revenge for the Jedi killing all the Mandalorians and Galadran. So that kind of gets taken away from it with the brain chips as well.
And so I saw back up here, Jedi says, "Good soldiers follow orders." Watching, because Tad, I know that I don't think you watch any of TCW after season 5, right?
I watched a little bit of season 6, but because it was so asinine, and I didn't think it was part of the EU anyways, because it was technically released after the decanonization.
Yeah.
That I was just, I don't know. I stopped having interest, so I got like midway through season 6, and then season 7 is not EU at all, so I didn't bother with it.
Yeah, no, but because there is emotional weight behind.
Yeah.
The clones doing their the good soldiers follow orders line. I can see why people do enjoy it, but as somebody who's coming from an older generation of Star Wars fandom, quote unquote, I guess, like we've said, the getting rid of their free agency, it's more akin to real life, where sometimes soldiers in real life are ordered to do things that they morally do not agree with, that they regret, things that really mess them up for the rest of their lives.
It happened, yeah.
And so when they're being forced, when it's just a switch you just flip on during TCW, it turns them from being real living people into droids.
Yeah, it's happened in our real life history. It happened, with some of my buddies that went over to the Middle East. It happened during World War II. It happened during World War I. And soldiers are sometimes ordered to do terrible things, and then they do it, and it screws them up.
And that's Lake and Anderson saying here is the 501st Journal is great. That the whole voiceover for the entirety of Battlefront 2. That's some peak Star Wars shit right there. That's some of the best Star Wars to ever come out, and it's really interesting seeing it from their point of view, where they're Ayla Secure, them having to kill her. They're all ugh, it affects them. They carry that weight with them, and they have that regret. And even reading, because I do read quite a bit of the Marvel Star Wars stuff, in new canon. There's multiple comic book issues where, in Darth Vader 2017, there's a bunch of clones who are gathering together some dead Jedi stuff, and one of them ignites lights. Everybody's "Oh, look at me, I'm a Jedi," and they don't seem to be expressing any remorse for what they had done, because the switch got flipped. It got flipped, and they're no longer the clones that they once were, and they would have to literally surgically remove the chip in their brain in order to get free will back. But it's obvious from multiple comics that I've read in some of the books and stuff like that, that the clones, they're just all right, whatever, we don't give a shit, we killed them, and that's cool. And so going from a more realistic depiction of the regret and the remorse of those people that the clones would go through, versus them basically just being B1 battle droids, that also plays into a lot of people's criticism of the prequels being it's one disposable army versus another disposable army.
I mean, that's kind of what the point of the Clone Wars were.
Exactly. But when you give them that emotional depth where they can actually grow and become their own people, we could talk about, we could argue
Yeah.
this exact one.
That's happened in the EU. You know, it's in the books. Granted, it's not as people don't read. That's my problem. Is people don't read. So there's that's why we have all these misconceptions. That's why we're sitting here talking for an hour and 56 seconds here.
It's, you know, it's what we were talking about at the beginning is like, it's difficult to like expect people to like sort of read every piece of media and like to be really big consumers of it like we are, but that's TCW really created a lot of problems for Legends fans, and I see some people in here like kind of going back and forth about, you know, all the things that happen there, but TCW literally just does not fit.
No, it doesn't.
And there's no way to make those two things coincide with one another.
One of my friends who's actually a writer, he actually went in and found there was an insider article where Filoni admits that he never really intended for TCW to fit in with the expanded universe. So it's like, why are we still trying?
Why he would want that to be the case, I can understand why.
I can send you the insider clip later if you want, but
absolutely.
Yeah,
I can see like the rationale behind why that would be the choice that he makes, but so it's like us as Legends people, we could see it like decanonizing essentially everything that we had ever read as it was going on. So it's like, this has been like a weird, slow process of like mourning the EU. Like I remember being on like various internet forums and like seeing people basically just like watching their Star Wars like get killed off the further TCW went along and stuff. And I was not keeping track of it, but like when it was like all on Netflix and I think they released the 6th season exclusively on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember, I binged quite a bit of it, but I was like, it's like this just none of this is like, because I read the Republic comics, and none of that coincides.
No.
Can enough of the Mortis arc fit so Abeloth can still exist? That's another. That one's tough for me because I absolutely hate Fate of the Jedi. But yeah, go ahead.
Here's the interesting thing: Ahsoka is never mentioned in Fate of the Jedi. They basically say that Obi-Wan and Anakin went to Mortis and found the Mortis dagger and talked with the ones and all that, but Ahsoka is not ever mentioned. You can finagle it so that the rest of TCW never happened, and that perhaps Mortis was even Mortis was just a vision of Yoda, because at the end of Fate of the Jedi, they never actually find the Mortis monolith. And even in Crucible, they find something similar to the Mortis monolith, but it wasn't the Mortis monolith. And it gets me that there's a whole other thing with the monoliths where I'm like, are those actually like the Tho-Yor, or are they, you know, the giant pyramid ships that brought the Jedi to Tython? Because they're shaped the exact same way, and
like a double-sided pyramid type thing.
Yeah. So
I absolutely love Dawn of the Jedi, and Dawn of the Jedi existed like in a weird era of Star Wars, like where they all knew that the EU was going to be gone.
And they stopped giving a crap about continuity, yeah.
They stopped giving a shit about continuity, and a lot of these comic book runs were like ordered to die off. Like they were just like, done. Stop making Legacy Volume 2.
Stop making Invasion.
Dude, Invasion. That
we were finally going to get visual depictions of the Yuuzhan Vong.
Dude, that's exactly what I was just thinking. I was like, I get to see these weird fleshy sticks that shoot out like plasma bolts. Yeah. Like that's that because we see some of that in Legacy as well. Like we see like what happened to Coruscant during the Yuuzhan Vong War and stuff like that, and it just looks obliterated. Mm-hmm. But going back to like the Mortis stuff, this might be something that you know more about. Was Abeloth made prior to the Mortis arc, and they were trying to make Abeloth squeeze into that Mortis arc in TCW, or was it vice versa?
No, it was vice versa. It was just Troy Denning being Troy Denning.
You know, I love Troy Denning. He's my absolute favorite author. I will say this about Troy Denning. People say that Rian Johnson ruined Star Wars. Troy Denning was doing his best to try and ruin Star Wars prior to the sequels or anything like that.
I disagree a tiny bit. I understand where you're coming from. I disagree a tiny bit. I don't hate Troy Denning, but
I don't hate him as a guy, but like I really don't like the Darkness stuff.
I find Darkness boring at best. But
well, as like I was a huge like Jaina Solo like fanboy, and I just feel like he just did not do a great job of like giving her, how should I verbalize it? I mean, like, everyone always like, for those of you who don't know, this is like maybe getting like too deep into like geek stuff, but Troy Denning like wrote what people affectionately call bug orgy books.
Yeah.
He has written good books in Star Wars. I will give him that. But it's weird that they entrust him with so much of the EU towards the end there. Like he was in control of so much. I just found it to be odd. And then JT did someone mention Yuuzhan Vong. Yeah, they get a bad rap. A lot of people, they talk shit on the Yuuzhan Vong, and I feel like people kind of get lost in the sauce of the Yuuzhan Vong.
Mm-hmm.
They're like hilariously evil. Like I think that you'd said to me one time, they're like Warhammer villains essentially.
Oh yeah, basically they're just grimdark.
Very grimdark shit.
Yeah. And you know, they're interesting because like there was basically like, what would be alien to Star Wars? Star Wars has all this technology, and we as our culture view that as alien. So they had to basically think, what would be alien to a super advanced society, a super low tech society that's somehow more advanced to them.
Yeah.
So,
you know, that's I love like those connective tissue things in the EU, and like that's one of the things that I enjoyed so much. This technically still happens in Disney canon or whatever, but what I enjoy so much about the EU is like they're like things all connect. And in KOTOR 1, Canderous Ordo literally just describes a Yuuzhan Vong scout ship.
Yep.
And I remember having read the New Jedi Order and then going back to play KOTOR. I had not read the New Jedi Order books before playing KOTOR for the first time. Mm-hmm. Going back and replaying through it for like the 100th time, I was like, wait, holy shit, that is literally just him describing the Yuuzhan Vong.
Yeah.
I had dial-up internet at that point in time, so like it wasn't super quick to be like, I'm gonna like go on, Star Wars.com, all this stuff. But like having read through all the New Jedi Order, I felt rewarded. It's like that's like a side conversation you don't have to have with Canderous,
right?
But you're being rewarded for digging for it.
Little Easter egg, and that makes the chemicals in your brain go.
The Iron Inquisitor, is this one of the homies from your stuff?
Yeah, he frequents my Discord a lot.
Is that a Jarek Funko Pop?
It is. That is Jarek.
Did they make one of those?
We have another guy on our Discord. His name is JJ Plagiarisms.
God, that's so on brand.
He makes little custom Funko Pop icons for people because he has his own custom Funko Pop icon. Gotcha. And he does it for his video thumbnails too. So I think he made one for Iron.
Is there like a Jarek? Was it those Black Series figures?
No, if there was, I would have tried to find it and own it by now.
Are you into those? Like, do you have any of those? I've thought about buying them, but
what do you mean, the Funko Pops or the Black Series?
The Black Series.
Well, move my green screen here. I've got.
It's attached to your chair. Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, I've got Jaina. I've got Django. I've got
Is that
Boss.
that whole like EU poster you got back there? Like the one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's the.
Dude, that is sick as hell.
I originally didn't want to show this because my room's messy and the 80s wall paneling is gross.
Dude, if I could find that 80s wall paneling, it would be all up back here.
Do you want to buy my trailer? You can buy my trailer. I'm trying to get the hell out of here.
Just send me the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, as JT said, join the Discord. Join Tat stuff if you're not already part of it. Can you imagine Rey running into an entire fleet of Yuuzhan Vongs? She would be so cathartic for EU fans. I don't have like issues with like Rey as a character necessarily. It's just how she's written.
Oh, I mean, I don't know anything about her because I still haven't seen the sequels yet.
I really admire you for that. I'm like, dude, he's gone this long with having never watched. Because I think you watched Rogue One, right?
I watched Rogue One because it was bought for me, and I was kind of forced to watch it.
I feel like, was it your coworkers that bought it for you?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Rogue One's like pretty okay.
I
Fine.
had a whole list of faults with it. I actually took notes during it.
I mean, people look back on it like with kind of rose tinted glasses, I think, because at that point, I think the only thing that had come out was Episode 7. I don't think that Last Jedi was out yet. I don't think.
I don't
But
know.
Rogue One came out, and it's pretty boring. Like it's pretty dry. It takes a while to get to the plot points that I enjoy, and then Darth Vader happens, and then everyone's like, "Oh, it's the best movie ever be made."
My
Like,
biggest pet
just
peeve
let
was
that last 3 minutes.
my biggest pet peeve is they don't understand how hyperdrives work.
None of this, the sequel trilogy as a whole, they have no clue.
You can't exit. You can't enter hyperspace if you're inside a planet's gravity well. So
yeah, but there's I don't know if you've heard about this. There's hyperspace skipping
real.
in Episode 9, where
What do you
they're
mean?
going to hyperspeed coming out of it, hyperspace coming out of it over and over again to try and lose the Empire.
So micro jumps are a thing in the expanded universe.
But here's where my issue comes in, is that the Empire can track them through that. Even if that's in the EU, that would still bother me.
I don't know about that.
That's just, that gives people too much power. No one could ever hide, ever. There would be like no escaping anything. So like Poe Dameron's hyperspace skipping to try and outrun the First Order fleet, and they're right behind him the entire way. I'm like, you mean to tell me this ship can take very specific calculations when Han Solo and Chewie, they gotta like essentially break out like a piece of paper and a pen to like do calculations. But both of these groups of people are skipping through hyperspace and staying in order with one another.
Yeah, I don't really know about that. I do know in the expanded universe though, micro jumps were a very like risky thing, and that like only a few people have ever done it. So Anakin in the book Jedi Trial at the Battle of Praetorian, he was making a run at one of the enemy flagship's bridges, and he destroyed the bridge, but just as, because he was going to hit it, he was so close, he was going to hit it. So just as he destroyed the bridge with his lasers, he did a micro jump to the other side and was able to get unscathed because the bridge was already destroyed. So that was one of the only like 2 or 3 instances of a micro jump I've read about. But generally, you don't want to do them because they're very risky, and
there's a chance you'll get like turned into spaghetti.
Oh yeah, there's a chance you'll just die.
But like Skooma, so when the hyperspace jumping in Episode 9, they're jumping into and out of planetary atmospheres. By the way, like they go through like it's like a J.J. Abrams just like word vomiting different biomes onto screen. So like they're going through like an asteroid field, and they go like through like another planet's atmosphere. They're just like next to a bunch of like a giant sun. Like it's just they're going through all of this stuff.
No. So you have to get out of a planet's gravity well before you can even before the navicomputer will even let you go into hyperspace.
And it's sorry. I want to see what I lost. We'll jump over that. I was just trying to keep track of like what's going on in the chat. I was like, wait, what now?
Oh, sorry.
No. You're totally. That was me just being like, wait, what's going on with that? Yeah. But and then GP5 operator, they fly now. Did you watch any of the trailers for the sequels at all? Did you at least like go that far?
I've caught the trailers every now and then, just out of just trying to look at my email, and then there's the trailer, stuff like that. But
what Sugar Ray is like saying here is there's a line in the Episode 9 trailer where Poe Dameron says they fly now because they're using rocket. Like they're using jetpacks. It's like Jesus. That one I think is like where the last piece of my interest really died off in Episode 9. I was like, oh goddamn.
I still haven't seen any of them, and I don't plan on it.
And so this maybe a little bit more. While Abeloth was rumored to be the most powerful character in the EU, all honestly, Bedlam spirits, all the most powerful beings in most powerful beings in all of Star Wars. Is Abeloth supposed to be like the most powerful being in all of Star Wars?
I mean, she's written that way in Fate of the Jedi, but he's referencing the Bedlam spirits in the weird UK Marvel comics. They appeared in one issue where have you encountered them in your readings?
I don't think I've maybe died that like weirdly like the UK because like they were getting like weird specific to their country, like Transformers comics and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, they got
So
their
I don't
own
know what the
specific
deal is
comic.
there, like why the United Kingdom gets like that weird shit, but I don't think I've encountered them so
Well,
far in
they
my
put
reading.
them in the Legends Epic collections now, I believe. So if you buy the if you
Marvel,
buy
like, yeah.
if you buy those, I believe they're in there.
I don't. Those are the only ones that I have not bought yet because they're always around because no one wants them essentially. Like
Oh,
the
that makes me
newspaper
sad.
clips and like the original Marvel runs, those are like the easiest ones to get a hold of. If you're trying to find like the Clone Wars Epic Collection Volume 2, good luck. Like you're gonna have to like take out like a second mortgage on your house to buy them.
Oh,
Like
I've got the Dark Horse omnibuses that don't include the stupid Son of Dathomir comic. So.
I would get those, but I just don't like the format of how small they are. Like I like the size of
What are
there's
you,
some
80?
like risky prints in some of these epic collections where I'm just like, you did not do a very good scan of that. Like I have like the original legacy run, and the prints are like the scans top notch, like delicious. Dude,
Mm.
like put it into my butter, I'll spread it all over my toast. Some of the prints in the epic collections are I'm like, that was you couldn't have like gotten a hold of somebody at Dark Horse to like maybe get like a better print of this.
Well, Dark Horse has the license again.
Yeah, because like they were going to TDW, I want to say, for like their young readers kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Dark Horse, they're like, yeah, we know what these guys are like, and they ended up like just going back to them for like those young reader things. So it's like the High Republic something or other. I'm really bad at keeping track of the High Republic stuff. The main comic book run was fine. The books are like boring as hell.
Can they just finish Legacy?
You just finished Legacy?
No, can they just finish Legacy already?
Legacy Volume 2, like so that convention that I'm like helping to organize,
Mm-hmm.
we have
What?
the author of Legacy Volume 2 coming to it.
Oh,
And I want to like, I know she's probably like under NDA for like certain things, but I kind of want to be like, so where's Darth Nihil at? Like, what's going on with that?
so wait, who's coming?
Yeah,
What?
like, I always forget how to say her last name. Star Wars.
Do you mean Jander Sema, the artist?
She's the artist. Volume 2. Hopefully this isn't like I need like the actual sequel to it. Karina Becco. I'm
Okay.
definitely not saying her last name right, but she's the author of Legacy Volume 2, like the sequel series
Yeah.
to Legacy 1. She's the one who was writing it like when it got cut off. They're just like wrap it up as quick as possible. Like just kill all these Sith, get it over with.
Yeah.
I just want to acknowledge Skuma's comment here. Alan Moore did a lot of drugs and wrote wacky UK Star Wars comics. Is he the one that was writing all of the Marvel ones?
He could have been writing the UK ones. I'm unsure, but
he's a weird UK wizard, man.
I don't really pay attention to a lot of like the writers and artists and stuff when I read comics.
I think that's like sort of like if you're like a regular like comic book, like I consume comic books in general. Like
I'm a very casual comic book guy, so
exactly like if you're like really in that culture, you're more likely to pick up on people's names and yada yada whatever. Like I mean I love most of John Ostrander's stuff in Star Wars.
Yep.
Dawn of the Jedi gets a little stupid like towards like the latter end of that comic book run. But Deadeye, thank you for stopping by. I wanted to acknowledge you really quick. Love you, appreciate you, man. But
oh yeah,
it was Oya Cigar.
well, Sukuigar. That means hello.
And I picked up a little bit.
It literally means so you're still alive.
Hell yeah! That's like what you say at the beginning of every one of your videos, right?
Yeah, say Sukuigar.
Yeah, I love that. I doubt we'll ever see Legacy Volume 2 and 4. And dude, I mean, we're never gonna like see the conclusion of any of those stories.
We're not gonna see the conclusion of anything.
They did do one more issue of like the Star Wars Marvel run. Like it was
Star 108,
Wars,
yeah.
The number 158. It was like the only continuation of anything prior to Disney purchase that they continued.
Yeah, and they just all they did was trash on Expanded Universe and that.
And I'm not a big fan of like that original Marvel run. Like the Lumaya stuff. Obviously, they were picking and choosing a lot of things.
Well,
from
the Marvel comics are S canon for a reason. What could fit, and what didn't.
Can you explain the canon tiers to me really quick?
Oh yeah. So there were a couple tiers of canon. G canon was the top. That was George Lucas. That was the 6 movies, and like I said before, George was not beholden to the EU. He could override it whenever he wanted. He would, something I wanted to mention earlier, but I didn't get to it. He would like go through the source books to make sure he didn't take some names and stuff. That's actually in like, yeah, no, he, there's footage of him doing it in the, I can't remember if it's the episode 3 behind the scenes footage or if it's the Attack of the Clones one. But he would like go through the source books to make sure he wasn't taking names that already existed.
I love the thought of George like opening up like Wikipedia and hitting Control F and then just typing the name that he wanted to like come up with.
I doubt he could use it, but that's just
he's an elderly man. He's earned it,
That's just me, my experience of trying to teach old people computers. But
yeah. But continue with like the
yeah. Here. So then there's T Canon, which I don't count. That's just TCW. That's Filoni canon. Yep. Gotcha. It's supposed to be for television canon, but the only thing in it is TCW, despite the original Clone Wars series, the Ewoks show, droids, and the made-for-TV Ewoks movies not being in that category.
Jedi Knight show, I believe.
Huh?
Weren't they going to make like a Young Jedi Knight show that was supposed to be set?
I think Kevin J. Anderson did say something about that. I'm unsure. I don't know a whole lot about that, but I heard the same rumors as you.
I feel like they may have even like filmed stuff for it. But yeah, sorry, continue. T Canon.
So T Canon, don't count it, don't bother. Then there's C Canon, which a majority of the stuff falls under. That's the novels, the comics, Star Wars Insider articles, West End Games source book stuff, some of the more linear story video games, but even those are still S canon.
They fluctuate, yeah.
Yeah, then we get to S canon, which is secondary canon. These are older material that had trouble before they kind of doubled down on making the continuity consistent.
Wasn't like Boba Fett a whole different person?
So Boba Fett has 3 different backstories.
Nice.
But the EU dealt with him beautifully. If you read in Legacy of the Force and in Star Wars Bloodlines, one of my favorite Dark Horse comic runs, they take all of these backstories for Boba Fett and they mush them into one, and that makes sense.
Is that the one where he does like a hit job for like 1 credit?
Yeah.
I was just trying to remember because I reread through that like somewhat recently.
Yeah, so that was a whole. Yeah, there's a whole lot of context with that, but yeah. I don't think we have time for that.
I'll try to set up like in one sentence. Like he runs into the child of one of the clones.
Yep.
That clone has like some big bounty on them. He kills the person that had the bounty on him for like 1 credit, something like that. If memory serves.
Yeah.
But like like you were saying, like there's some bits of like when you like continuity's been running for nearly 40 years.
Yeah, you're down to hit snags. Yeah. So one of his backstories was that he was a former stormtrooper and that he killed his superior officer and became a bounty hunter. Mm-hmm. Another one was that his actual name was Jaster Mariel and that he was a journeyman protector on a planet called Concord Dawn. And then he ended up, I don't remember how he went and became a bounty hunter, but he became a bounty hunter. And then the third one is obviously George Lucas's version where, he's a clone son of Boba Fett. They made it so that he's still the clone son of Boba Fett, goes through all the stuff he went through in the young Boba Fett novels. Then when he's 16, he kind of settles down on Concord Dawn. He gets married to this gal named Syntes Vel. They have a child together, Aelin Vel.
And she's in Legacy of the Force, correct?
She's in Legacy of the Force, yep. She's the one that's in carbon freezing, and they have to get her out. So, he's using the pseudonym Jaster Mariel, who is actually his adoptive grandfather, because that was the Mandalorian who took Jango Fett in when his parents were murdered by the Death Watch. So him taking that pseudonym is like an homage to his father. So he becomes a journeyman protector on Concord Dawn. But his commanding officer in the journeyman protectors ends up raping his wife, Syntes. So Yeah, he kills him and then ends up self-exiling and then becoming a bounty hunter. So it took all of these backstories and mushed it into one that made sense, and it was brilliant.
I forgot
Um,
that there's is it in Legacy of the Force where Boba Fett's like sort of like incelly,
what do
where
you
he's
mean?
like,
Oh
I
yeah,
think no
no.
communication
So that's I
like that.
can't remember if that's Bounty Hunter Wars or that's one of the older novels.
Yeah,
They make him into like a homophobic incel, and I'm like, really?
yeah.
Yeah,
And then I wanted to acknowledge Empress Renesmee's thing really quick. One of my biggest issues with Legends is Dark Empire is I don't like the Emperor coming back in either one of the timelines. You and some of the EU authors both. There was like
right.
some EU authors who were like, no, absolutely not.
What
Like
do you?
they would say like they would like Mara Jade I think had said, well, I don't know if that was really him. Like
Well, yeah. So Mara Jade didn't believe that was the actual Palpatine. That's why she never went back into his service. And she was messing about with trying to bring Kyle back from the dark side too, with the whole Mysteries of the Sith thing. But
Skooma Joe, one of the homies here in chat, who was like he's talking about the Young Jedi cartoon show. Uh, he's discussing that, but like Skooma Joe recently played through Mysteries of the Sith.
mhm.
He tried walking me through how to play it, and I was like, dude, this is just too fucking old. I was like, I don't know what the hell is going on here with these controls.
It's
But
like PlayStation 1 style graphics too. It's really bad.
is that technically in the Jedi Academy game series? Technically, not Academy. The Jedi
Technically,
Outcast games.
it comes before Outcast, and then
Okay.
so it goes Dark Forces, Jedi Knight, Dark Forces 2, then Mysteries of the Sith, then Jedi Outcast, then Jedi Academy.
Gotcha. Skooma, like because I think that what is it, Drummond Koss is in Mysteries of the Sith, and it's like a
Yep.
like entirely different planet than it was like in SWTOR. Like I said,
Yeah.
took liberties. But
Yeah.
and then backing up here a little bit, I want to find the comment again. I can't remember who it was that said it, but somebody had asked, "How do you feel? Like, how would you feel about watching like Star Wars? The hell's the name of their anime series they did? Why am I'm drawing a blank on this? What was that? Let me see here. Star Wars anime? Star Wars Visions. Jesus, that whole series just left my brain.
Oh, I saw that. I
How did
watched
you
it.
feel about that? Since it's like non-canon to either continuity.
There were some little bits some of them I liked, some of them I was mad about.
Mm.
I liked the one with the alternative band, and they had like the hut drummer. I thought that was cute.
You and Skooma both. Yeah, I think he has because that's what they call that, rock opera technically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun little skit, and then there was another one that I liked, and I can't remember what it was. It's just not a memorable series.
No, I mean like people were really hyped on like that first like samurai one. They're like, oh, that looks so awesome.
Yeah.
But
Oh, Skumo's right. It's Tales from Jabba's Palace.
yeah, sex between those not married is immoral. Damn, that is such
Yeah.
a weird line to hear from Boba Fett.
And
'Cause-
but then in Legacy of the Force, he has a gay best friend. So
well, yeah, because in Legacy of the Force, like he starts hanging out with his daughter,
yeah. Well,
and
granddaughter.
oh, sorry, granddaughter, and he also, damn, dude, I forgot how old he was in that. And then he teaches Jaina just she his. I love seeing like really boiled down versions of Legacy of the Force where people like Boba Fett's advice to Jaina: just stab him. The
Yeah.
knife. It cracks me up every time I think about it. Base Tad Larkin, Tatooine Rhapsody was the best.
Yeah. It was
That's
that's the one. I liked that one.
I was like, I'm not into musicals like in general, so that one was like a bit of a slog for me to get through. But the
I
one
like
that I
that
really
style
liked
of music.
was,
That's the style of music I grew up with. So
yeah, I can completely understand why people enjoy that one. But the one that I really enjoyed was like the bunny girl one, just because like
oh
family stuff. That one, I feel like those are like tailor made just to hit me right in the heart because I have
mm.
3 adopted brothers, so
Oh cool.
there's like a whole scene in that one like where the bunny girl like is saying to like her like shogun, not shogun, but like her feudal lord dad.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, like, well, I'm not really your kid, and he's like, oh no, you are really my daughter. And I was like, oh shit. And I was like, oh god, it just gets me every time. I don't know
Right
why.
in the feels.
Yeah, right in the feels. But like, I wanted to get your take on that because it's not technically cheating on the expanded universe if it's not
No,
canon. Either
and
way.
that's why I watched it, because it wasn't technically cheating.
Is there like a Patreon goal that someone could hit to get you to sit through and do DVD commentary of the sequel trilogy?
It'd be a lot of money. A lot of money. It's
I
not on my Patreon, but you'd have to Venmo me a lot of money.
I really admire the fact that you've stuck to that. Like, you're like, I'm not watching them because I just don't care. You know, honestly,
I just don't care.
I think I'm kind of getting to that same point where I watched the first episode of The Mandalorian season 3, and initially I was like, oh dude, this is awesome. Like when I was like watching it happen, when I like looked at the runtime, I was like, there's only like 10 minutes left in this, and nothing has happened. Like nothing, no plot progress has happened. But like they reeled me in initially, but like, look, here's like that, like he pilots a Naboo fighter, like a recommissioned, like redone Naboo fighter. And I was like, oh, it's so awesome to see that again. Like Baby Yoda, it's obviously cute. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I have a question actually, real quick.
Go for it.
Speaking of hyperspace earlier, how the hell does that thing go into hyperspace? Because Naboo starfighters,
rings or anything either. It just goes.
Yeah, like, Naboo starfighters need hyperspace rings. And actually, in the beginning of Attack of the Clones, you see when Padme's huge like royal starship comes in, there's 4 little Naboo starfighters that are attached in sockets on the large ship, and that's how they were brought into hyperspace.
I think they talk about that in. Here's the issue. Without getting too like in the weeds here, Mandalorian season 1 and season 2, pretty good. Book of Boba Fett, objectively bad. But there's like 2 episodes in Book of Boba Fett that are just Mandalorian season 2.5.
Yeah,
like they have nothing to do with Boba Fett at all. It's just Din Djarin's the Mandalorian's name, hanging out on Tatooine, doing his thing, going to see Luke's Jedi Academy or whatever. And there's like a junker on Tatooine who I think installs a hyperdrive on that Naboo cruiser. If that's purely off of memory, like don't take that as like objective fact.
But they address it.
They at least address it. Like it's not like he just gets into it, he goes into hyperspace. But that Book of Boba Fett was a weird one because Din Djarin goes to see Luke's new Jedi Academy, and it's on Ossus. I'm like, what? Like it's that's so they didn't mention on screen that hey, this is Ossus, but like later on, like on Twitter or wherever the hell, they're like, no, that was Ossus. I'm like, you almost got me there. You almost got me to like something about this.
Is it like obliterated like it was in the old EU, or is it?
No, it's like just a generic green planet, and that's sort of the problem with a lot of those shows. Like a lot of the stuff in new canon is. They're all just kind of generic planets with one biome.
So like, did they just look at the essential atlas and just kind of pick all these planet names?
More or less. I really do think that's like kind of what they did.
Like, not paying attention to the ecology or like the history of these planets or why they're like that.
No, like because like in episode 7, like they show that Luke's Jedi Academy. Well, something went down. Kylo Ren like killed a bunch of the students. Yeah, whatever. Your run-of-the-mill Anakin Skywalker stuff. Yeah. And then in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic book, which was like a companion piece to The Last Jedi, Palpatine blows it up with his mind from across space. It's like a huge lightning strike hits the Academy. Everything burns down. Everyone's dead. Yeah, whatever. And so, if memory serves, that was Ossus. So we see Luke's Jedi Academy in action in the Rise of Kylo Ren comic and in the Book of Boba Fett show and sort of in the sequel trilogy. And it only reminds me of like what I lost like with the expanded universe being thrown out. I'm like, I could have had Ossus. Like you almost gave that to me. And then
Ossus was cool because Exar Kun basically blew it up in the Tales of the Jedi comics. And then after the stuff with the Yuuzhan Vong War, like way in the future, the Yuuzhan Vong actually terraformed Ossus to be like a living planet again because it was a dead planet for a couple millennia.
Was that during? Because like the Yuuzhan Vong, like they terraformed quite a few planets.
Yeah.
Sometimes against people's wills, and then later on in Legacy of the Force to try and help out planets.
Yeah.
Was that against someone's will, or was that for the Galactic Alliance?
Well, so in Legacy, the whole thing, the Jedi are trying to basically fix all these planets that were harmed during the Yuuzhan Vong War, because even 100 and something years after the war had happened,
Shit's so bad.
the stuff was still bad. Like Coruscant was still had like the rings around it too that didn't.
The Ossus project was what
Yeah,
the initial was
as it
called.
was
Yeah.
called, the Ossus Project, because the Vong terraformed Ossus for them, and they thought, oh, we could actually do this for all of the worlds that were affected by the Yuuzhan Vong War. But then the one Sith sabotaged the project to kind of start the Second Imperial Civil War.
So what you're saying is that the Ossus project was an inside job.
It was.
It literally just was. And then Skooma said it just looked like Yavin. Yeah, it's that's like an issue with, and like not to like dive you too deep into like these things because I know it's A, not your area of interest, and B, you've never seen any of it, but that's like kind of like an overarching issue with a lot of Disney stuff is it's got like the bones of something interesting, but
We
there's no
don't
meat
need.
on those bones. So like they come close, like you can see them getting so close to something interesting happening, and then nothing happens, or like it kind of goes the way you think it would, or they kind of like roll back on a lot of like the things that they had initially planned on or whatever.
Well,
But
you're not selling me here.
no, I mean honestly, I am coming to like watching. I was binge watching The Bad Batch, and I was like, wow, holy shit, I do not care about this. Like I just, dude, I just did not like it. And then I watched episode 1 of The Mandalorian season 3, and I was like I said, at first, it looked like some cool stuff was going to happen. Last 10 minutes, I was like, oh, we got nowhere. So I think I'm kind of coming to the conclusion that I just don't care about it. And it's like, do I even keep consuming it? Like, do I keep covering it? Because, like I said, there are some interesting things in the comics or in some of the books they've done, but is that enough for like me to keep like a Disney Plus subscription?
Well,
You know?
quick side question before we get back to the expanded universe, because I haven't even finished the tier list yet of the different tiers of canon.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Now I've been hearing a lot of things that like the shows aren't even referencing the books anymore. Like the shows are kind of overwriting what's going on in the comics and in the novels. Like I heard Bad Batch or TCW season 7 or something overwrote like a whole novel about Ahsoka and stuff like that.
Well, to answer your question, yes. That's we'll go back to the canon thing here in a second, but like the thing that like everyone was saying like when the EU got thrown out and sequel trilogy, yeah, whatever, they're like, oh, it's gonna be a streamlined canon, they're gonna have a story group, everything's gonna make sense, and we're not gonna have like these bad stories like Dark Empire, we're not gonna do dumb stuff like that. And then like almost immediately they started contradicting their own canon, which again, like that's when it's going for a long time, that's difficult to like to maintain. But when that's like the main selling point and people are like actively talking shit on the expanded universe, and then you're just doing the same thing but faster.
Yeah.
Like the Marvel universe had the same problem in the comic books where there was the main Marvel universe, Earth, like the 616 universe. There was a Marvel Ultimates universe. The whole point of the Ultimates universe was to make things streamlined so people could like, oh, you can jump into this. There's not 60 plus years of history, yada whatever. But then everyone had a mad dash as an author to just complicate the entire universe so fast that it was redundant. Like there was no point in following both. That's more or less like the nexus point that we're coming to in Disney canon, where you're not really rewarded per se for like consuming the written media or video games or comic books, whatever. You're not really rewarded in the same way that you were like with the EU. So we just, in a roundabout way, we came back to all the same issues that people have with Legends. So to make a long story short, yes, they have done it to themselves. But yeah, so anyways, back to I think we're on T canon television.
No, we got to C, and then I'm on S. So
okay,
S is secondary canon. S is for all the stuff that the older stuff before they got really into like maintaining the continuity really good. Sorry, my COVID addled brain is fried.
How you up with that?
Oh, I took a test yesterday. I don't have COVID anymore. So
okay.
But
You got some brain fog maybe
I
going
got
on?
I got some fogginess going on. So
Yeah. Same thing. I was dumb as shit after I had COVID. Like I couldn't remember anything. So I feel you.
oh yeah, like I did my timesheet at work today. I'm like, wow, I did nothing.
I get you. I know. I feel you. But yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, so before they really started doubling down on creating a consistent continuity, the stuff with the Marvel comics. So like I said before, there was like Wes Jansen dying at the Battle of Hoth, where, in the X-Wing novels, he's alive throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
Then there's just weird things in the Marvel comics that don't really fit. But basically, what does fit is brought into C canon. So the S canon is basically secondary canon. Elements from S canon are brought into C canon through the novel. So, for example, Lumaya appearing in Legacy of the Force. Lumaya is originally an S canon character, being in the Marvel comics, but her whole backstory and her being referenced in Legacy of the Force was brought in. So she's now C canon. So there's different elements from those comics that are brought into C canon through references through C canon material. The other thing that's in S canon are video games. Now, this is because video games have a lot of exaggerated like mechanics.
You can just say this Unleashed. I know you want to.
Oh yeah, I'm getting there. Because they want to make the game fun. So, like, for example, Galen Marek pulling an entire Star Destroyer out of the sky was not really exactly what happened. So and there's a novelization that brings Starkiller back down to Earth. He has all these crazy like force repulse powers, and the novel really just brings him back down to like movie Jedi level.
He's not like an exaggerated, ultra powerful being. Yeah.
So a lot of those force powers are exaggerated. Like the Star Destroyer ripping down from the sky, that's like the Star Destroyer was already coming down, and he was basically trying to make it so it didn't fall on him. But then he had to basically kind of run out of the way anyway, because he wasn't moving it.
Yeah. Probably the most aggravating sequence in any video game I've ever played.
And even so, you have to remember what Yoda says in Empire Strikes Back: size matters not. Here's this little 3-foot tall green dude lifting an entire X-wing.
The guy stealing Luke's like MREs.
Yeah, eating his granola bars.
Yeah. And then so that's S canon?
S canon. Yep.
Okay.
And then obviously like we were talking about the different endings earlier. There's the dark side ending and the light side ending, and normally I can't think of any instances where it's not, but I'm just gonna say for safety's sake, normally the light side ending is always the canon ending. So KOTOR, Force Unleashed, the Jedi Knight games, the canon ending is usually always the light side ending.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what's after that? Is it like movie canons? Like I know that movie canons like that's it. There's no change.
Well, movie canon is G canon. That was at the top. That's George Lucas canon. The last is non-canon. So these are satirical materials like the Star Wars Robot Chicken, the Lego Star Wars games and little series, and then like infinities. So these are fun what if scenarios, and you wanted to talk about Skippy. We can get into Skippy. So Skippy, everybody likes to say, oh, there was a Jedi droid in Legends. No. Skippy was part of a Legends. It was part of a Tales comic, or where it was infinities. So infinities were fun what if scenarios. So the tale of Skippy is what would happen if that droid that Luke didn't pick at when the Jawas were selling him R2D2 and C3PO, the one that had a bad motivator and basically blew up. So what if that droid was force sensitive?
Did it like commit suicide to like make sure that R2D2 got picked?
Yeah. It was something stupid like that. And there's actually better Tales comics that I think that even if they were canon, I think would be cool. Like there was one where Han Solo has hyperdrive issues and he flies to Earth and
Oh
crash
yeah,
lands.
Chewbacca is like Bigfoot.
Yeah, yeah, he gets killed by Native Americans, but then Chewbacca is walking around.
Natives represent.
He's walking around as Bigfoot, and Indiana Jones actually comes and discovers, like, looking for Bigfoot, comes and discovers the Millennium Falcon and the skeleton of Han Solo.
Hell yeah!
So
And
that's one of
that's
my
like
favorite
fun,
Infinities comics.
one-off like what if type things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're fun, not meant to be serious, not meant to be canon.
and like I mean, speaking of like we got like the tiers of canon in Legends,
Yeah.
that the expanded universe. I apologize.
you,
The sequel,
you can say either or.
Disney Star Wars has literally the exact same thing. It's like that again. That was the whole selling point of Disney purchasing Star Wars was, you'd have like these think piece articles and shit. Like people would saying like, oh well, Legends was inconsistent, yada whatever. Disney Star Wars just got to that same point, and then like someone like way further back here, I think it may have been Lakin, like said that yeah, Filoni completely ignored Depa Balaba's death in the Canon comics.
Yeah,
that's like one of the first scenes in Bad Batch, for reference for you, since you've never seen it. And I read through the Canon comic book, so I know how all that stuff went down. Basically, completely different context for like how she dies, different lightsaber colors, those sorts of things, like things that aren't necessary to change. Like it feels like they're just changing things just to have changed something, and that's sort of a Dave Filoni issue, kind of across the board. Is like, look, don't get me wrong. I think the guy working in his own universe, having his own sandbox to play in or whatever, he makes good stuff. Like that's totally fine.
Yeah,
but just don't expect him to ever care like about stuff that happens in the comic books, the books or whatever. Like there's even an episode of there's a Tales of the Jedi series, which I feel like you're just trying to make people like upset by naming it after like one of the most popular comic book series in the EU.
I will admit I was super excited because they used the same logo and everything. And then I was like, oh my god, am I actually gonna get like Ula Keldroma and Kay Keldroma and Nomi Sunrider? Am I actually gonna get that? No.
It's just more Ahsoka. It's just more so the Count. There was a Count Dooku episode in it that was very good. Like it did like it was. This is another like misconception. Like in Legends, is I see a lot of people saying that Count Dooku was not actually a Sith.
Yeah, no, he was a Sith.
His name is Darth Tyrannus. He literally has.
He went to the dark side.
Crimson Acolyte. Got it. Okay. Thank you for stopping by. Love you.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. But yeah, that's like I get that fairly regularly in comments and stuff like that. Is like we have like a whole. You know how this works. So there's like a whole hidden side of YouTube comments, like where they get like automatically flagged.
Yeah.
YouTube's like they're just saying.
I get some of those. Yeah,
saying something awful or whatever. We had mentioned one time in a live stream and maybe in a short once that Count Dooku is definitely a Sith. Zach kind of disagrees with me on that. Again,
I think I was there. I was there.
Yes, we've had Zach and I've had this conversation several times, so I'm sure you've been there for more than one.
I got out Darth Plagueis and I started referencing it for you.
Yes, thank you, man. So,
I was there.
I've gotten like one of our first death threats was stuff for like Gray Jedi stuff.
You got death threats? Are you serious? I haven't even got death threats yet, and people hate me.
We've made it. I've gotten a death threat on YouTube.
People hate me. They hate that I don't like how TCW doesn't fit in the EU and like pointed it out for everyone to see. They hate me. I know there are people who would kill me if they could. I have not received a death threat.
I've seen like I've been like in some circles like that aren't necessarily just EU spaces.
Yeah.
Like where I mean, you know that the expanding universe expose video that you've done is carried over to a lot of different areas of the internet.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
And I feel like people watch that and just assume, well, this guy's just some like, shitlord, edgy type of guy. I've never got like, even when I first watched it, I did not get that impression. I was like, this is just a dude who's really passionate about the EU.
Yeah.
That's really all it is. But, like, I will see people mention your stuff in the same breath as people who are just like bad faith.
Like the fandom menace folks,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I'm not fandom menace,
I feel like you're your expose, your video on that, and the TCW stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's probably where you got a lot of like the hate comments from.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was my assumption, was that because people love TCW, like they really
Yeah.
love it a lot. It's what they grew
It's a
up with,
great show. It just doesn't fit with the expanded universe.
and that's like literally all you were saying in that video
That's
was like
all
literally
I
just
was
doesn't
saying.
fit.
That's all I was saying.
And then just to the Dooku episode was great. I wish we had character development in the movies and the Clone Wars. That is like definitely a weak area of the prequels. Is there's a big time jump between each episode 1, episode 2, episode 2, episode 3. But like I was saying to you like just a minute ago, the Dooku episode of Tales of the Jedi is just legitimately really good. Like I really enjoyed it, even like not necessarily being like a huge like Dooku fan, I guess. Like I don't know, the dude just never interested me that much. But yeah, it's like it's a solid. If you were gonna watch like anything in Disney canon, I would say maybe like watch a rip of that on the internet somewhere. But
Well,
yeah, like you were saying like you were in our chat
yeah.
like discussing Dooku is just a Sith. There is
Yeah.
no there's no
He's
debating that.
yeah, he full on crossover Sith.
I mean, like there's especially like in the Republic comics, the dude's doing the most Sith things you could possibly do
Oh
the
yeah.
entire time. He is just objectively a Sith Lord. But I think that people like they're self imprinting on him, and they
Mhm.
like they can understand like that he does have. He's not incorrect about the Republic and about the Jedi
No.
and some of those deeper things, but it's not like he's doing those for altruistic reasons. Like he's not. Oh, I really want to do government reform, and I really think that, if we just reform some of these things, it'd be no. He wants to be like one of the most powerful beings
No, yeah.
in the universe. Like it's not coming from a good place.
No, he knows that the Confederacy is just a plot to bring about the rise of the Empire,
Yeah.
That he thought he was going to have a bigger plot in. If you read the
Yes.
the Revenge of the Sith novels, he has this whole grandiose idea of what his actual role in the war is, and then up to the point where Anakin has his lightsabers around his neck, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I was wrong."
I love seeing like very specific Legends memes, and there's a really good one of Count Dooku's got both the lightsabers up against his neck, and it's like someone put that. Yeah, that's me. But you're wondering how I got here, and then it hit like that like theme song. I was like, damn, dude, that's so good. Because like
Yeah.
in the novelization, it goes so much more in depth of like his thought process. He's like, man, I really should have seen this coming. Like, I cannot believe this is. It's like depressing almost. That, like he got. I mean, finessed into like being a Sith Lord, but the dude's like in his 80s. It's like, come on, man. Like, you really didn't think this was gonna like. You thought this was like the long term plan? Like, come on.
Yeah,
man.
right.
And then I wanted to just like highlight Scuma's comment here really quick. It really frustrates me that they use the logo. I think Dave Filoni likes paying homage to the EU, but it always just ends up frustrating people with both Tales of the Jedi and using the name Jason. Like you were saying, Tad, it's the exact same logo and everything.
Yeah.
So when they announced it like at their big board meeting or whatever, they're like, boom, we're making Tales of the Jedi. And I was like, holy shit. Like you thought. I was like, we might actually see like Exar Kun, little Cal drama, like some just wizards chopping wood, that type of stuff.
Mm.
And it's just another Ahsoka show.
Yep.
Nothing against Ahsoka. It's just that's not a character that I care that much about.
That's my whole issue with like why I'm not interested in the Disney new canon, because it's just a Dave Filoni circle jerk. It's just all of his characters, all of his story ideas, and I'm just the thing is the new canon from my perspective, what it looks like is everything that I disliked about the direction the expanded universe was going towards the end, but amplified by 10. So
yeah, and I think that's sort of where some of my Troy Denning distaste comes from.
Mm-hmm.
The end of, because people do look back on the expanded universe with rose-colored glasses, but there were definitely some bad spots in there. Like towards the end of the universe, like you're saying, I was like, ugh. Some of the stuff like Fate of the Jedi stuff, like
Yeah, towards the end, we were getting crap. Like it was getting crappy. So like the last Marvel run, like not Marvel run, the last like OT run, they did another Star Wars run with all the OT characters.
Just Star Wars.
Yeah, and they managed to do it worse than the original Marvel run. And like they had some weird, crappy. They had some weird, like screwy stuff where like Luke and Leia and meet the Nogri before Heir to the Empire, where it was just some continuity, like little things, but still things that make you go like, wait a second, what?
Yeah.
But like towards the end,
Towards
the end, quality was definitely going down. I like, so I say like the last golden age of Star Wars was like 2003 to 2007. I think that was like the last like golden age of books and media we got.
I also got to highlight this. Iron Inquisitor, I have always been I even before like I was like terminally on the internet, I didn't like Denning stuff like as I was reading when I was growing up. I was like, no. Like because without, I don't want to get like too deep into that, but yeah, yes. Like I'm not like a dude who's like gonna be emailing Troy Denning and being like, I fucking hate you so much. I just think that it's weird how much control they gave him over the universe towards the end. And then I wanted to scroll back up here towards, I think that the fandom menace just don't like bad stories. The issue with like the fandom menace overall, it encompassed a lot of people. It was like a big net that was thrown out, and some of the people who like or were in that net who were kind of leading it, some of them were like pretty disingenuous, and I think that it kind of gets rid of all nuance in any conversations you could possibly have about Star Wars.
My thing is lumping me in with people that are just being contrarian for the sake of personal gain is not, it's insulting to me. And I don't even think of myself as a contrarian. I'm just very passionate about what I love. I dislike the direction things were going. I'm underneath my EU rock, and I like it under here. And I'm inviting you all with my channel to come join me under this EU rock. It's cozy. I've got cookies, we can order pizza. That's great.
You were never like inherently negative. I think that people, they just saw the Captain Fordo stuff.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we're gonna let this guy with this stuff. But if you go into like Mandalore, it's not negative. You're just like covering Star Wars continuity and stuff like that. It's informational. It's like with like a edutainment type twist, as like you're Tad going throughout the galaxy, chronicling all these things.
And that's why instead of basically taking Captain Fordo and just saying, oh, I'm not going to do the rant stuff anymore, I'm going to do lore stuff. That's why I made a whole separate channel to kind of like, well, I've kind of inadvertently created this image of a lore ranter on Captain Fordo. I want to focus on the things I like about the expanded universe, and that's why I made Mandalore. That's me. That's all of my love and my reverence for these stories and trying to put them in a pseudo historical context for people's entertainment. Whereas Captain Fordo has become. Oh, sorry. Continue. I talked over you.
Go ahead.
Whereas Captain Fordo has come where I basically voice my frustrations with not just the creators, but the fandom itself, with just how backwards and I'm generalizing here. I don't mean that all people watching are ignorant, but generally a lot of the fans are ignorant. And I wanted with the expanded universe video, I wanted to put it out there that like, hey, all these misconceptions are wrong, and here's why, and here's all my sources in the description. You can read them for yourself. But then people still fight with me. So
yeah, that's. I mean, like I was saying, like seeing people I'll see the people post like some of those videos like in Reddit or like in a Discord or something like that.
Yeah,
people like really have like a very misconstrued idea of who you are. I don't think that some people even like are aware that Mandalorian and Captain Fordo were both run by you. Yeah, I mean, how long has it been since you uploaded something to Captain Fordo anyways?
Forever. And it's just because I've been focusing on Mandalore, because I'm having more fun with Mandalore, and it's made me a better person, because I used to be a very negative person.
We all were. Yeah.
I'm now a more positive person because of it. I have a good job. I own a house, which at my age, even though it's a crappy trailer, at my age, there's not a lot of people that own homes.
You mean Slave One? That's your house.
Yeah. I'm getting married in a year, whereas when I made those videos, I was just I was I was like in between kind of. I was in an interim period in my life, and I was just upset and angry.
Yeah, I mean,
Where
dude, 100%.
yeah,
Like, I feel like a lot of people went through that, like around that same time period. That the internet was a very shitty place to be. Like in
it still
even
is, but
2018, it was like pretty bad to be on the internet at all.
yeah, it still is a shitty place. I hate the internet, but I'm here.
You're just older
Yeah,
now, so like we've already been through like the way like his like YouTube and all these places. They just feed you stuff that just makes you angry. You're just like you watch one thing that like you engage with. Now here's 40 other things that are also gonna like just get rage clicks from you.
right.
But yeah, like I completely agree. Like I probably went through that exact same phase. Like when you're younger and like you haven't figured life out and shit,
Yeah.
you're still going through it. And that I really quickly want, if you look at old AOL message boards and chat rooms from the early 90s, you authors would get bombarded with death threats every time they posted something. Star Wars fans are crazy even back then.
Oh yeah.
1000%. Like
I remember Karen Travis called a couple of them Talifans, and she
didn't
yeah.
you kind of swear off the Star Wars universe like for
Well,
because
it was
Talifans, yeah.
it was Filoni that drove her off, really, not just the fans. It was Filoni.
Backstory of that. Hit me some of the history on that.
So now this is just from reading her blogs. She probably has her own side. I'm not going to speak for her, but from reading her blogs, I got the sense that she was upset that basically Filoni was overwriting all of the Mandalorian lore that she wrote with the Republic Commando novels, and not even just the Mandalorian lore, but how the Grand Army of the Republic works, and the nature of the clones. And Lucas Licensing told her, "Hey, if you want to finish Imperial Commando, you need to rewrite Republic Commando." And she basically said, "Nah, I'm out." And now we have, we have some idea how she would have concluded it with hints we get in Legacy of the Force, but we don't have Imperial Commando. Like there was 2 more Imperial Commando novels planned that would have tied up loose ends, and we would have actually figured out what happened to Sev as well. But now it's gone, and she's sworn off of I think she still writes for Halo, but she swore off of Star Wars.
I remember seeing like Skooma saying in this comment. I remember seeing like way back when she like first said that stuff, like Talifans.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that stuff like on old internet forums and shit, like around 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012. I remember like seeing like her people like really turned on her for a while, and they were saying like, because the characterization of Luke in a lot of those books, that's not just the fault of her.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Legacy of the Force and stuff, they're all kind of guilty of
that whole series was a mismanaged clusterfuck.
Yeah, because it's being written by like how many authors? 3 or 4?
There's like 3 or 4 different authors in there. There was Travis Denning. Was Aaron Alston in there?
I think he wrote the first one. I think he wrote Betrayal, I want to say. Star Wars Betrayal. Let's see here. Legacy of the Force, Star Wars Betrayal. Aaron Alston, boom, nailed it.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got everyone in my neighborhood pregnant by how on point that was. Remembering that author. Barb, you should mention how Bad Batch completely destroys the Republic Commando reputation even more. I mean, because Tad, didn't you make like a video about the EU version of essentially the Bad Batch, like Delta Squad?
So I did a video about Delta Squad. That's actually my most popular video right now. So thank you, Bad Batch, for
hell yeah,
because that's my money earner right now.
But like that's because again, like I'm not super well versed on like clone
I
stuff.
made a short called The Bad Batch Before the Bad Batch, which that was about the null arcs.
Okay.
So in the expanded universe, some of the first clones, there were 6 clone prototypes designated nulls, where they were just too unpredictable, too mentally unstable, and the Kaminoans were going to recondition them, which basically meant they were just going to kill them and start over. But
Yeah.
Cal Skirata, who was one of the Mandalorian training sergeants that Django hired to help train the clone commandos, he said, no, I'm not going to let you kill kids. And he kind of raised them. Yeah, basically is what he said. I'm not going to let you kill kids. He basically raised them by himself, and they became his own kind of like spec force that, yeah, they work for the Republic, but only Cal can control them, really.
Mhm.
So,
And really quick, wrong comment there. What is AOL? I'm 19. Get the hell out of here, man. Are you God, dude? I can feel all of my pubes turning gray. That is so upsetting. Dude, that's like it's such a huge part of like my teen years. So it hurts me physically to read that. But yeah, but Zim, it's an old internet search engine from the early 2000s.
yeah.
Yeah, like the internet was the wild west back then. But I mean, like we were mentioning earlier, like Skuma had said, like a lot of EU authors would even when people are hyper fixated on something and like they're really in like a fandom and they're really passionate about it, it brings out crazy people and it brings out a lot of normal people, but like anything, like the most extreme opinion on anything gets elevated to the top because people are responding to it, they're giving it attention, yada yada, whatever.
Right.
But I mean, like we were saying with Karen Travis, I mean, like people really had very harsh opinions of her, and then same thing with Troy Denning. Like that's why I think it may have been Empress Renesmee, like even who said like, "Oh no, it's Barb's basement," like a anti-Denning person. No, I think I have like normal opinions about Troy Denning. I don't have. I'm not hyper fixed. I'm not sending him like letters in the mail or some shit. Just for a long time, and like still kind of now, like there are things in Legacy of the Force that I really like,
Mm-hmm.
but overall, the sum total of it, I don't love. But like there are concepts and things in there that I really enjoy. But like you were saying earlier, towards the latter half of the EU, they were getting real fast and loose with a lot of stuff.
I think a lot of them knew that there was going to be a reboot, and
that's like something that I would really want to talk to some of these folks about. Is like, I know people who like have interviewed EU authors and they're like friends with them, like they have their personal cell phone numbers, like that kind of shit.
Oh, that's wild.
I won't name and
anybody hook me up with Karen Travis? Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Does she even do interviews anymore? I can't think of the last time like I saw her like at a fan convention even. But there's some folks that I know that have like those ins there, and I would love to ask them, when did you hear that Star Wars was getting purchased by Disney? Because it must have been sooner than 2012 when they announced it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because they must have felt something was off, that like they weren't ordering more books, they weren't asking for more things to be made, and I'm sure that shoestring budgets were kind of going on. So I would love to like see that like from their side of things.
Well, you got to remember too, there's like a concept gap between 2012 when the buyout happened and then 2014 when they announced that the expanded universe was no longer canon.
What was that first book they came out with?
So Tarkin, and that was by James Luceno. And
I forgot that they were like bringing in some like EU authors originally.
Well, I think Tarkin was originally supposed to be expanded universe, but then they had to change it to fit in with the new canon. Don't quote me on that, but that seems like what
kind of what the order was.
Yeah.
Did you read it, Tarkin?
I have not read Tarkin, no.
Well, what's that one by Chuck Wendig that
everyone my god. Aftermath.
Aftermath, because that's like set like right after episode 6.
I don't know when it's set. All I know is the guy can't use commas to save his life. Everything is a run-on sentence. Like I'm not saying that the story is bad because I don't care, but if you actually like read, I've read passages from the book. I haven't read the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not well written. It's not a well-written book. I don't know who the frick edited it or how it got to be published. But it is not a well-written book.
It's funny you say that because Zach read it and he said like I didn't like try to like preempt him with this. He was like, yeah, the book's just like kind of poorly written. Like he wasn't like, oh, it's the worst thing. He's like, yeah, it's just kind of like not well formatted. But he also read there's a newer canon book that's Shadows of the Sith or something like that. And that one's also like, it feels like a run-on sentence, like you were just saying. Like it feels like it's like continuous one train of thought throughout the entire thing. But then my boy, He's one of my all-time faves. What's your favorite EU book and video game? He's asking you, Tad.
So now, it's almost like you have to ask. Depends on the week you ask me.
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly rereading through and even reading things I've never read before. Because I get Patreon commissions to do for certain topics, and sometimes in between commissions, and I finally have like, oh cool, I get to do a topic I'm interested in for once. Yeah. I'll choose something that like I haven't read about before, just for the fun of reading about it and researching it. Mm-hmm. Right now I'm rereading through the X-Wing books. I've read them, and then I'm listening to them on audiobook while I work as well. I really like. I can't really specify one specific book, but I can do a series. Mm-hmm. So I really like the Republic Commando series. That's obvious because There's a joke within the Mandalorian costuming community that the Republic Commando novels are the gateway drug to being a Mando. It's probably different now with the Mandalorian show, but back when I first started making my armor, like, God, I'm guessing if the expanded universe has been decanonized for 10 years, then I'm guessing it's been over 10 years because I started working on my armor. God, maybe like 2014ish.
I think that it's like technically because the EU got like wiped out in 2014.
Yeah.
But the purchase was in 2012. So the edict was always going to be that it was gone. Yeah. But yeah, it's just over 10 years that Disney bought Star Wars. So yeah.
But well, real quick on that, actually, we had no idea what they were going to do. Like so in between 2012 and 2014, they announced that they were going to do new movies, and that's it. And I followed all of these sites. I followed like there's one site called moviephone.com.
Damn, that's an old sentence.
Yeah. They were actually speculating. Well, at this point, they transferred from like a call-in service, because back in the day, kiddos, you used to have to call in to a website called Moviephone to figure out when the movie time was.
Yeah.
But they kind of transferred,
which is a show set in the 90s. For reference, like in Seinfeld, there's an episode where they're calling Moviephone to like, like Kramer has to like pretend he's like looking at the matinee stuff and all that other shit. That's how old of a statement that is. But sorry.
But they transferred into like a Fandango sort of site. So they were really like on their news articles, like they had like clickbait articles, but they were like speculating all this different stuff. And there was like, apparently like there was going to be Luke was going to have a new Jedi Order. So they were speculating that, it was going to be on Yavin, and maybe we'd have like stuff with like Coran Horn and Kyle Katarn and all of his students at the Praxium. And then like, one of the Solo kids falling to the dark side, which all happened, but it was all the speculation off of what all the little tiny tidbits we were given. And a lot of these sites were speculating that they were going to take from the expanded universe. And a lot of, I felt like the general consensus was like, oh, this is a positive, cool thing. We're going to see some adaptations of our favorite EU stories. But
man, were we wrong?
Yeah, we were wrong.
And then Ulti, we get it, Ted, you're old.
Yeah.
We're both old. I
think Brian's are older than I am, but
I just turned 32 in February.
Yep. My fiance is the same age as you. I'm 28.
Damn, dude, you're young, but
not that young. I'm encroaching.
My birthday was like relatively recently, and I had to ask my wife. I was like, "Am I turning 31 or 32?" 32, and I was like, "Am I?" Like, because after like you turn 21, it just does not matter anymore.
Oh yeah,
no one gives a shit about your birthday. Like you move on.
I ate a handful of Cheez-Its the other day, and I had heartburn, like the worst heartburn ever. And I'm like, "What the hell happened? I used to be able to eat a box of Cheez-Its when I was 17."
There's a reason why I have these on my desk at all times.
Yeah.
I would body spice. Like I would, every restaurant I went to, if there was a scale 1 to 10, I'm like, give me 10.
Yeah.
Give me the hot as shit, and now I'll have like a glass of milk, and like my esophagus is exploding.
Yeah.
Like, that's definitely your body just gets shittier and shittier the older you get.
Yep.
But I remember when I first heard about Disney's takeover, I said, "Great, can't wait for Dancing Stormtroopers." If only I knew how much worse it would get from there, how worse things were going to get. I mean, like Tad was saying, like there was like a general air of excitement, like
Yeah. I was
around.
excited.
Yeah, it's like, well, because if we in like literally StarWars.com's like press release, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna be taking things from the EU that we like, and we're gonna be adapting them in like other areas." I was like, "Oh, dude, we're gonna get New Jedi Order. Like NGO is gonna happen." I didn't think they were gonna do the Yuuzhan Vong stuff because I don't think that
That's already
general
divisive.
would like that wouldn't be that palatable to them.
Yeah.
Palatable. I think they would have been like, "What the fuck is this?" I would so confused. But I thought that we would get some Jason Solo and Jaina Solo and Ben Skywalker. I thought we would get these things.
Mhm.
So there was definitely like an air of excitement for a lot of people. Like my first assumption was not, "Oh, this is going to be a bad thing," but that was also around the time like all these like mega corporations are like buying each other up. So it's like Sony's like the little engine that could like they wouldn't sell Spider-Man to Disney. Disney owned Marvel, they own Star Wars. Like all these like big production houses are like all getting absorbed into one thing. So there's no creativity anymore.
Right.
It's like everything just falls by the wayside. But I would be lying if it's like in 2012 I wasn't thinking there's so much more opportunity now because George Lucas definitely did have the whole IP on ice.
Yeah.
He wasn't really doing anything with it outside of like TCW, but we had no idea that it was like gonna be expanded further from there.
He made it clear after Revenge of the Sith that he didn't want to make Star Wars movies anymore. He was on to other projects.
What was that first movie he made about like the African American pilots?
Oh, Red Tails. That was about the Tuskegee Airmen. Yeah.
Oh man, Ski. That one's a bit of a bad one. that's a very dark spot in American history.
I mean, that's what they were called.
No. Like I'm talking about like there's just people Google Tuskegee experiments and
Oh yeah. Oof.
very negative things that happened like around that. But yes, Tuskegee. That's like a much better story. We won't get on that, but like yeah, that was like my first visceral reaction to it. Thinking about all the wasted potential from the sequels makes me wish that we got makes me wish they get decanonized, but I remember that it has fans and I don't want them to deal with that. That's very nice of you. Like because people are fans of the sequel trilogy.
I'm gonna tell you something. Before we die, they're going to reboot the canon again. Yeah, I guarantee you.
Yeah.
It might not be in the next 10 years, might not be in the next 20 years. Before we die, they will reboot the canon again.
And especially with like AI technology and stuff like happening now. They're like CGIing Luke's face onto like a body double.
Oh yeah.
The sky's kind of the limit for them in that sense, but I mean, every canon eventually gets bloated, and then they move on to something else.
Yeah,
and they have to like reboot it in some way to keep like original ideas going. I think we're just getting to the point in the stream where we're just answering people's comments. You can go so far as to design a sequel game plot to the Knights of the Old Republic, Sith Lords. I just feel like that part of the franchise deserves a fitting legacy. The complete lack of like KOTOR content, I find to be bizarre. Like it's an area that is, I mean, even between like Tad, I'm sure you agree with me on this. The time period between even like the Darth Bane stuff to Episode 1, that's like mostly uncovered. Time periods in the EU.
There's a lot of gaps in the EU. Even in between SWTOR and Bane, there's like a 2,000 year gap. Yeah,
like there was like a lot of space. And to be fair to them, the High Republic is kind of like filling in that 100 years prior to like Episode 1 or whatever. But I mean, like the fact that the KOTOR remake could get delayed or canceled is insane. Like that's such like a I don't want to armchair CEO or anything like that, but that's just straight up stupid. Like they could like not. It's like a gold mine of content that they could just essentially give it a facelift, re-release the entire story as it is.
I mean, I'm happy that they don't have Canderous Ordo out there swinging the Darksaber, but that's just me.
I mean, like even if they kept it all Legend stuff,
They wouldn't. They would rewrite it to fit their canon, and that's what they were going to do.
Let's
So,
say that it did. It stayed in Legends. Would you
okay,
be willing to like purchase it and play
I
it?
would play it if they kept 100% true to the story and, they just recreated the dialogue bit by bit. Yes.
And I think that so again, not to speak too much about the current canon stuff, but in Disney canon right now, like the High Republic stuff, which I'm sure like you're aware of the existence of the High Republic stuff,
I'm aware. Yeah.
they made hyperspace travel seem a lot more. It's like still like very early days, sort of like getting to the outer rim, very very dangerous. Lots of like uncharted star paths and stuff like that. That's like really where like the issues would come in with like KOTOR, like reboot that fits into the Disney canon.
Hmm.
They're still getting around hyperspace like relatively easily in KOTOR
Yeah.
1. They're going like all like the outer rim Kashyyyk, Rakata Prime, Lahone or whatever. So like there's already some things that are pre-built into Disney canon where they just literally would not work with KOTOR.
Yeah.
So,
They make it sound like, from what I understand, the hyperdrive was invented only 1,000 years before the Battle of Yavin.
I'm not sure about that one. I don't,
From what I understand, I could be completely wrong, but from what I understand,
I'm not knowledgeable enough to like discredit that. Because as far as I know, like
and I'm not knowledgeable enough to dispute it if you were to try to discredit. So,
we would both just be like ignorant dudes
yeah,
talking about something we don't know
yeah,
about. But I think that Revan's still technically canon to Disney canon because he's referenced in the visual guide of Rise of Skywalker.
mm,
So it's like there's like all these fleets that Palpatine has that like just come out from underneath like the crust of Exegol or whatever.
mm.
There's like the Nihilist fleet. There's the Revan fleet. I'm like, that doesn't count. It's like you do not get to count that. It's like that is such bullshit. I was like, actually give us these characters, you cowards. Like this is that's such a lazy way to be
It's a
like
tease,
that's what like, it's all just it's all gristle and there's no meat. They're never like gonna get to it. If that
right?
makes sense. And then KOTOR 1 and KOTOR 2 are amazing games in spite of whatever shortcomings due to rush production. In the KOTOR 2, the stories and characters were great. I don't think have you ever played through like the lost content mod?
No, I have not. I heard that it's essential to really kind of play when you do KOTOR 2, and when I do eventually play through it, because I am in the middle of streaming it. Actually, I say middle, but I'm not even off Taurus yet in my stream on Mandalore.
Oh,
But
KOTOR 1, KOTOR 2. Terrace
KOTOR 1.
KOTOR 2 at all, right?
No, KOTOR 1. I was
Yeah.
gonna say when I'm finished streaming KOTOR 1, I'll start streaming KOTOR 2, and I want to have the lost content mod before I do that.
And I would when I replayed through KOTOR 2 recently, I downloaded the mod that allows me to skip over Paragus. I was like, absolutely not. I'm just not. It's just too much. Uh,
Right.
so here's what we'll go from here, guys. Is like, we'll do like a little bit, like we'll answer a couple more questions here, and then we'll do kind of like a general wrap up.
Okay.
Because I'm assuming it's getting late for you, Tad. How much longer can you go for?
I mean, it is getting late. I've got none of my friends have been bugging me yet. We're supposed to start an RPG. One of my friends made a custom RPG.
Just like a
Oh yeah, they're all in, kind of waiting for me. But I'm good to, like, we can wrap it up.
we'll wrap it up here. I'll have High Republic and Star Wars canon is out of the question. The only story from that era that intrigues me is the potential Star Wars eclipse. I mean, the comic books are fine. The books are boring as shit. They're just 3 books of things exploding. Like when I say things, it's all just one space station that's exploding over the entirety of the book.
Oh really?
Disney better not touch Revan. The quickest way to turn the fan base even further against us. They change anything but KOTOR and they'll face the power of the dark side. I mean, yeah, that would definitely be a bad look. Would you recommend the High Republic? I dropped it extremely early. Comic books are good. The main series books are boring as shit. There's a very very interesting comic book like mini series called Trail of Shadows or Trial of Shadows, and it's about like a hard boiled detective Jedi. Like his whole job in the Jedi Order is he goes out and investigates essentially crime scenes and shit. It's very very interesting, and there's like some legitimately haunting imagery in it. Like you might not know the name of the species off the top of your head, but they have like an upside down face. Like their teeth is on the top of their head, and they have the 2 eyes down here.
Oh,
They're horrifying generally.
I
So
know exactly who you're talking about. I don't remember the species off the top of my head.
yeah, so like there's like a visual of one of those alien races like in the comic book series. I'm like, that's like legitimately upsetting to look at. But really, really quick, Tad, is there anything else that you would want to touch on prior to getting into your RPG game?
I mean, I had a whole list of stuff as soon as you were like, "Hey, let's talk about some misconceptions about the EU,"
Dude, we
and
can
I
do
was like,
for sure.
I mean, like, I was like, oh, I could talk about how overrated Darth Maul is, how
Oh damn, you're even anti Maul. How do you feel about him coming back in TCW? Being
So
brought back
I'm not anti Maul, but um, a lot of people think that Maul was this big, powerful Sith Lord when in all of the expanded universe media and even the novel Darth Plagueis, where Palpatine was kind of attempting to like kind of train Maul as a Sith apprentice behind Plagueis's back while he was still his master. Maul is a glorified Sith assassin, and I see all these people being like, Maul was the most powerful Sith Lord. If Anakin never became, Darth Vader, he would have been the Emperor's right hand man. It's like, no, Palpatine was a rampant xenophobic. I don't think Maul was his long term game plan.
And he mentioned like several times that he's like a unleashed dog, essentially. Like he's incapable of not just being driven entirely by hate.
Even Dooku's like, Maul was an animal.
Yeah, like he had. I mean, like even in the prequels, like in episode 1, the dude barely talks. Like he's just fueled by
rage,
pure rage.
Yeah,
which I think that's like sort of how Palpatine raised him, more or less, was on purpose to be like that. But
I mean, he sicks them after all of his political enemies. He's just a glorified Sith assassin in reality.
I saw this comment right here. Overrated Darth Maul. It's not that he's overrated. It's like people like really
they misunderstand who Maul is
or his purpose.
Yeah, and so in Disney canon, if you want to make him a Sith Lord, fine, that's a whole new continuity. But if we're talking about Maul in Legends, he was a glorified Sith assassin.
Yeah, and like that was, I mean, it's a little bit confusing on like when Palpatine like really thought that Anakin was going to be the end all be all, because in the Plagueis book, like they can feel the Force like push back on them for trying to like
revive during their grand experiment.
Yeah, so it's like it's a little bit like of a gray area for me, like when they come to the conclusion. Well, when Palpatine's like, "I'm going to get Dooku to be my apprentice, but it's really going to go nowhere," like when he was like made aware of Anakin's existence, I guess.
Yeah,
is the first time he's made aware of him is in episode 1.
Well, yeah. So, when he's on, like, he meets him on the senatorial landing pad with Valorum when they first arrive, and Maul is still alive at that point. So
yeah, I wasn't sure if like that was just like the first time he was like aware of Anakin's existence, because they felt him in the Force, felt something happening in the Force back when they were like experimenting, like to try to like bring people back from the dead or whatever. So I was like, the confusion that came up for me there was, did Palpatine know there was someone out there that was like that? And when Anakin showed up on Coruscant, he was like, "Oh, that's the guy." Like that's what I sensed when Plagueis and I were like fucking around.
So I think he could like sense like his sheer power in the Force because like the amount of midichlorians, and I'm sure he's heard about him when Qui-Gon phoned into the Jedi Council. Hey, I got this kid. He's got like over 20,000 midichlorians. You got to take a look at this kid,
I did some blood analysis on this.
I just took the slave kid's blood without his consent.
I really took advantage of this impoverished lady.
Yeah.
But Sergio, he did take down the Black Sun in the EU. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of
it's like one of the most epic Maul moments.
Yeah, they're like, Palpatine's like, you go out there, you just do all the damage. Just don't get caught. Don't let them know that you're a Sith Lord.
Mm-hmm.
We got Som Raptor in the chat. Like right as Tad's about to have to go to.
Oh, hey Som.
Yeah, we're past the rule of 2. Wait, what?
Som's a good buddy of mine.
I mean, I think that the first thing I saw Som Raptor was he had that like iceberg video.
Yes, yeah, his
Okay.
iceberg video and his History of the Mandalorians video is a very popular one too.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else we want to touch on before we call it an evening?
Um, I think we touched on the big stuff, and if you ever want to talk to me more, you just gotta just give me a poke, and I'll
Oh, dude, of course,
gladly come back on.
for sure. Like I'm gonna try to like kind of make it like a bi-weekly thing that like I just do a stream that's not video game related. Like I just have someone on, we just chat. Dude, you're more than welcome to come on whenever you want. Obviously.
And maybe someday I'll come to the actual basement itself, but Barb has to promise to let me out.
I mean, that's a bit of it's a double-edged sword with Barb's basement, but you can never leave.
Like, does she let you out at all? Not even for like a smoke break, or?
I mean, honestly, there was like 3 weeks there where I just literally didn't even leave my house.
Ah, gotcha.
I maybe took like the dog for a walk or something like that, but it's like a dead season for like my work. So I work in video production for those of you who don't know. And during like the winter months, it's not super busy. So there was like a day where I was like, holy shit, I have like not left my neighborhood in like 3 weeks. So I was like telling my wife, we need to go like get dinner somewhere. Do anything that's like literally not
Right.
in this actual basement that I'm in. Yeah. But dude, yeah, of course. We'll of course have another stream, and maybe it won't be Misconceptions or something like that, but we can talk very specifically about certain eras of the EU or something like that. But we'll figure something.
No, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
anytime.
And my side, don't worry, man. You still clocked in your timesheet. But other than that, Tad, really quickly, tell them where they can find you at.
All right, so my YouTube channel is Manda-Lore, Mandalore, play on words. I do Star Wars Expanded Universe lore videos from a perspective where it looks like you're watching like a holocron or like a holo video, more accurately, of my character Tad Larkin presenting the history to you as if it was actual history, like you're watching a documentary. So
check out the History Channel. Is there you on Twitter or Facebook? You're on Twitter, right?
I got off of Twitter years ago, and then I have a Mandalore Facebook, but that's really just to post my videos and say, hey, I'm here.
But Tad's got a Discord, and I'll put all this information in a pinned comment for the for the VOD or whatever.
Oh,
but
cool.
We'll wrap up the outro here. Make sure you guys, the audience, stick around for the outro song because it's an absolute bop. But love you boys, appreciate you, and see you next time.
Bye, everyone.